Hello and welcome to the Escapees RV Club's 2020 Political Forum. My name is Sean Loring and I'm the CEO and attorney for the club. It's my honor to get to moderate this political forum. Please join me in a round of applause. Help me welcome all the candidates who took time out of their busy schedule to come here today. And please join me in a second round of applause for San Juanito Vallejo, Russ, Salita, and all the other volunteers without whose efforts this would not have been possible. Thank you. Prior to this event, we comprised and sent to you via email a political guide, and I hope you all received that. Our political guide contains a brief description of each office up for election, prepared by Attorney Susie Adams, and brief statements from the candidates for those offices. Please know, in keeping with the nonpartisan posture of this club, we contacted all of the candidates across all party lines to submit information for the political guide and to attend this event. However, particular to this political forum, we invited only the candidates running for office in contested elections, where multiple candidates were able to attend this event, to speak today. The format for this political format will be as follows. I will invite the candidates to the stage by office for which they are seeking election. I'll begin with federal offices, followed by state offices, and then followed by local or county offices. Each candidate will be allotted 3 minutes to deliver prepared remarks about themselves and their platform. I will call the candidates in alphabetical order, again, to be fair to everyone. After the prepared remarks, I will ask the candidates questions prepared by the Escapees staff and also submitted by you, our Escapees members. Please know, I will direct a question to a particular candidate, giving him or her 2 minutes to answer the question, and any of the other candidates for that office will be afforded a 1-minute rebuttal. In an effort to be fair to all of the candidates, I will try to ask them an equal number of questions. Please know we have a lot of candidates to hear from today. The candidates have been asked to respect the time limits, and I ask you, our audience members, to refrain from making comments during the event so that we may focus on the remarks of the candidates. Please remember, reasonable minds can differ. So, without further ado, please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll start our political forum. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. And I'd like to invite the candidates or the representatives for U.S. House of Representatives to join me on the stage. So Mr. Boatman, Mrs. Babin, and Mr. Abbey. Please be careful. Okey-doke. Okay. Owing to the fact that we're going to go in alphabetical order, Mr. Abbey, if you'd like to join us at the podium for 3 minutes.
Hello. Hey, good afternoon. My name is Chad Abbey. You got to speak. Oh, there we go. Again, I'm Chad Abbey. I'm running for Congress in the 36th District as the Libertarian. A little bit about myself. I'm not much of a politician. This is my first rodeo. My wife and I are graduates from Oklahoma State, from the class of '99. We have 3 wonderful children who live over in Houston. And for many years, I've been supporting the Libertarian candidates and Libertarian causes. I've spent the last 20 years of my life working in the financial services business, built a nice practice there. I'm also a real estate agent and investor. That's what I've spent my time doing over the last 20 years. And I'm here today mostly just to let you all know that you have a choice. As we've all seen, certainly over my lifetime, at the federal level, politics has become quite a circus. And I'm thoroughly disappointed in the fact that year after year, I hear from half of my friends who are Democrats and half of my friends who are Republicans that I need to hold my nose and vote for the lesser of 2 evils. And I just don't do that. If I can't vote for a candidate based on their principles and their morals, I'm not going to vote at all. And that's what drove me to the Libertarian Party. Basically, our platform is you live your own life and do as you wish, so long as you're not hurting anybody else. I don't want to be in the way of that. I think our federal government has become obscene in its size and the scope and what they do and the control they want to have over our lives. And that doesn't sit well with me. If elected to Congress, I will focus on several things. The first being reducing the size of our government. Second, I would like to see us really sit down and have a long conversation about all of the ridiculous and senseless wars that we're fighting around the world. And finally, I want to take a look at our banking regulations. It's an industry that I've been involved in for my entire career, and I'm frankly tired of both the blue team and red team bailing out banksters at every turn. That's why today I ask for your vote. Chad Abbey, running for District 36 congressional seat. And also, please take a look at us if you haven't. The Libertarian Party, you can find information at lp.org. Anyway, I ask for your vote. Thank you for your time.
Mrs. Babin, on behalf of Congressman Babin.
Well, going first, Brian's not going to make it, so I'm up. But you get the best part. Thank you. Brian will probably walk in sometime, so if he does, I'll let him take the stage instead of me. But I'm just so glad to be here today. He was scheduled for another event, but I brought along some of my best helpers. They're right back over here, granddaughters. We've got 16 of them, putting them to work. Brian and I live just down the road in Woodville, Texas, where the famous Picket House is. We became Republicans when Jimmy Carter was president, and Brian was serving in the Air Force. How many veterans do we have here in the group? Thank you all. Thank you so, so much for your service. Everybody give them a round of applause. So Brian was in the Air Force, our son was in the Navy. We came back to this small little town with 4 children, under the age of 5, by the way. And we wanted to support a strong president, and that man that we found to support was Ronald Reagan. So we got involved. We worked for other candidates who had the same courage and conviction and commitment. And you know, you can really take the measure of a person in a campaign, how they run a campaign, what they say in a campaign, how much you can trust the truth of what they say. So if you see an electoral map after, say, the 2016 election, you've got East Coast blue, West Coast blue, some little blue dots around the country for big metropolitan areas, but the most in the middle, the heartland of America. What makes America great is red. And that's where we live, folks. And that's why we chose to live here. And that's why you have chosen to live here and have your address here. So let me tell you a little bit about Washington. It's not East Texas. And the people there are not us. So coming back here and being, working here in the district when Brian is not scheduled by Nancy Pelosi to stay up there for ridiculous things, is like a blood transfusion for us. It really is. We just feel so good about being back among the people. Now, there'll be a lot of claims made today, and we'll be able to talk about those in a few minutes. But let me tell you something. Brian Babin is a good and faithful husband. He has been to me for almost 50 years. And he holds the same things dear that I hold dear. And he holds the same values dear that all of you hold dear. You can trust him on that. I know him. I know him best. So I want you to remember what you know about Brian Babin. And I want you to think about what you know about Brian Babin when you're told other things. And I want you to trust the truth. And I want you to trust me. So I've never been able to have him say anything different or heard him say anything different in those 50 years. He ran for office to serve the good people of East Texas because he is against a lot of things that are going to be said he is for today. So remember that, and remember Brian Babin, and remember those cute little girls out there who are campaigning for him. I'll bring all 16 next time. Thank you.
Mr. Boatman.
Good afternoon. My name is R.J. Boatman. I'm a Christian, conservative, constitutionalist, Republican candidate running for the 36th Congressional District. I'm a former judge, former organized crime commander for Harris County, Texas, and former police chief of the city of South Houston, Texas. I believe there is a great difference between standing for something and truly fighting for something. And I fought for things all my life. I have a beautiful family. I have a wife of 31 years named Terry. I have 2 grown sons, and I have 2 grandchildren, my newest, a young granddaughter. She's 8 weeks old. And I'm fighting for them, just like I'm fighting for you. One of the great things that I want to stand for is our right to life. I believe that every conception deserves a shot at birth and the full rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I was actually born 13 weeks premature. I was a consideration for abortion, but my parents, my father especially, said no. I was born, I was a very Bible life, and on that day they called me a living, breathing human being. But in this country, every day, we abort children up to 36 weeks. Under the lie that a life is not a life until it reaches full term. I didn't reach full term. I reached 27 weeks right at the end of the second trimester, but I was absolutely alive. I was allowed to grow and work and do great things for my city, my county, my state, and now for my country. And I'm going to fight for that life. During the police business, I was a hostage negotiator at one time. And I was able to talk a man into putting a gun down. He was holding it to his wife's head. His young son was also sitting in that room. And he told us he would take the life of his wife and his young son if we came inside. He also asked us to put our guns down, and we could not. We could not put our guns down, and we stayed until finally he did. We saved the life of that woman and her young child, and we actually also saved the life of that man. Every day in this country, the Democrats and liberals hold a gun to the life of those unborn children. I'm not going to stop negotiating. I'm not going to compromise. I'm going to stand strong and fight for that with every breath and step. I'm going to fight for our Constitution, our Second Amendment, our individual liberties, and for all Americans. I fought all my life for someone, and now I want to fight for you. On March 3rd, I'm asking you to fight for me. My name is R.J. Boatman, and I'm running to be your representative. Thank you.
Thank you all for those wonderful remarks. I'm going to move into the question phase now, and I'm going to direct the first question to Mrs. Babin. Currently, there is approximately a $12 billion maintenance backlog at the national parks. Historically, the government has closed parks to avoid maintaining them, and thus the maintenance backlog is reduced. What solution would the congressman offer to reopen closed national parks and to fund the maintenance backlog?
You know, y'all can't hear me, can you? I've got a teacher's voice, though. I bet I could do it. You know what? I am not a policy expert, but I have heard my husband answer this question before, and I know he is very, very supportive of the national parks, and we've visited many of them with our family because, you know, it's a lot easier to camp with a great big family than it is to pay for the hotel bills. So we have really taken a lot of trips to national parks. But I know the former Secretary of the Interior, Ryan Zinke, who was a very good friend, my husband really spoke with him a whole lot about that issue, and I think there is legislation on the books somewhere. It's probably sitting on Nancy Pelosi's desk that is going to deal with that. Yeah, like everything else, I know, I'm so sorry. But that's just the way it is right now. My husband says that not being in the majority is like being told that your job got transferred to Siberia. So there's a lot of things that he's working on. Ryan Zinke was a very close friend. He was a SEAL trainer. He trained our son, who's the Navy SEAL. So we had a real close relationship with him, and a lot of that stuff got in the works before the Republicans lost the majority. So we're big supporters of the national parks, and we will do everything we can to support that issue for those of you who all like to partake of that nature and that beauty yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. I now invite any of the other candidates to offer a 1-minute rebuttal if they'd like.
We had a bear in our camp in Yellowstone. Really interesting story. I'll get with that individually.
Thank you.
Personally, what I would do with the national parks, well, first of all, it's become a political football. It's silly that every time the government's spending trillions of dollars, that the first thing they do is decide that they're going to close down our national parks to save $12. I mean, it's ridiculous that we're even discussing this. But as a libertarian, I would turn all of the federal parks over to the states. I don't think the federal government should be in the business of having national parks. Give it back to the states. That's what I do.
Folks, please leave the microphone on. Yeah, that's fine.
My answer is short and simple. Any activity that allows our families to spend more time together and be together is absolutely something we need to support. Our national parks allow us to do that. I have great memories as a child traveling with my parents and my older siblings. So I'm absolutely going to support anything that keeps our parks strong, healthy, and whole. We need to also do everything else that supports our children, like putting prayer back in schools and having more time. And having more time to encourage our children to stay connected to our traditional family values and the foundations that made this country great. Thank you.
Mr. Boatman, I have a follow-up question. The nation's roads, bridges, dams, airports, and marinas are rapidly falling into a state of disrepair. In your opinion, are these problems that the state or the federal government is best suited to address? And as a follow-up to that, what is your solution, if you see it as a national problem, to address the nation's infrastructure?
I believe our country has two great jobs to do every single day. One is to keep its citizens safe and secure, and the other is to keep its infrastructure strong. And so I do believe that it is part of the federal government's place to be involved in the repair of each of these issues that have been aforementioned today. But I also believe that we need to work very closely with our states, very closely with our counties, our commissioners, our county judges, and even our mayors in our cities to make sure that we have the best plan. I don't have all the plans, but I can promise you this: I'll roll up my sleeves. I'll spend time with our state senator, Nichols, our state rep, James White, who I believe is here today, our county commissioners and our mayors to make sure that we are doing everything we can to keep our infrastructure strong and our communities safe and secure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
One more thing about the national parks. I do know that my husband and Ryan Zinke talked about moving the Department of Interior out of Washington, which would be a great plus for our national parks to get it on a more local level. Well, let me say about the infrastructure. My husband serves on the Transportation Committee and Infrastructure Committee. He has a rather senior position now, even though we're in the minority, and when we get back in the majority, he will be able to have even a greater influence. He has done a lot to help with this corridor of Highway 69, which is now an Interstate 69, what we know as Highway 59. And you know, a lot of the people in our area who depend on the logging industry had some problems with some of the changes that were going to be made because it was going to be an interstate. So he has really gotten that grandfathered in for the companies and the people and all of our communities who depend on the logging industry and those trucks going up and down the highway. So they've been grandfathered in, and they won't have to apply and do some of the regulations that were going to be required of them. So our businesses can keep running. Also, Interstate 14 is something that he's been able to push through and be a part of. Interstate 14 is going to be Highway 190 here. It will go from Georgia all the way to El Paso. It is an old proposal by Eisenhower that was called the Forts to Ports. So we will have an interstate highway also, which will bring commerce and traffic into our areas, you know, without diminishing our rural communities. And that's something that's really, really important that he's really focused on is the transportation and infrastructure, because those are some of the legislative bills that are sitting on Nancy Pelosi's desk, and something very, very important that we need to address. And one of his issues, he was appointed to this committee as a freshman, which was a very hard thing to do, to get on the transportation committee, but he is well thought of. There are people who talk about what they're going to do. Well, I'm here to tell you about what Brian Babin has done and what he's still doing for the people of Texas 36. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm probably going to start sounding like a broken record here pretty quick, but I turn it over to the states. I grew up in the Oklahoma Panhandle, and we didn't need a Welcome to Texas sign, because as soon as you'd cross that border, you went from dumpy old tiny roads to these big, beautiful Texas highways. The shoulders are big, and people will pull over to the sides to let you by. Texas is perfectly capable of taking care of our own roads and infrastructure. I would turn all of that back over to them. I don't need to send my tax dollars up to Washington, D.C., and let a bunch of yahoos up there decide how much of that money they're going to send back to my state. So, as for infrastructure, certainly we need to address it, but I say we address it here in Texas.
Mr. Abbey, I have another question directed towards you. Do you consider corporate power and economic inequality to be threats to the American Republic, and why?
I certainly do believe that corporations have far too much influence in our government. Basically, at least on the national level, corporations buy most of our elections. I think that the Citizens United decision, Supreme Court decision, that effectively allows corporations to pump as much money as they want into political campaigns is ridiculous, and I would absolutely fight to overturn that.
Thank you.
Would you repeat the question?
Yes. The question is, do you consider corporate power and economic inequality to be threats to the American Republic? And if so, why?
I think economic equality is a threat to what you've got in your pocket. And I think that people need to be able to keep what they work for. So I think that we have always been a nation of giving. I think we're a compassionate people. I think that we help each other. And I know you here in this community do. I know that in our community and most of the small communities, as I said, you know, the red area across America, the heartland of America, we believe in helping others. And we don't have to have agencies come in to do that. But we also believe in keeping our own hard-earned money. Now, I do agree with you about one thing. I do agree that you do need to work with your state and local government. My husband has an excellent relationship with Robert Nichols and with James White back here. They work together hand in hand. They call each other up all the time on the cell phones. And we can work for our communities. I think that corporations have a place in our business world. I think that so many of the regulations have been erased and eased by President Trump and by people who support him, like my husband, Brian Babin. And I think that's why we have a real thriving economy today.
Thank you.
Just a short additional answer. I believe that our country is served best when we have free and competitive markets. I believe that corporations should compete for our business, and we should make the decision about the businesses that we buy, and that's what keeps our economy strong. Especially if we get to insurance, and I don't know if that question is coming, but Obamacare is the worst mistake we ever made. It should have been abolished the first time the vote was called, and we need to open up competitive markets for insurance, let it be sold across state lines, and only then will we have good products, good prices, and good services. And when it comes down to the Democrat and the liberals lie about existing illnesses and existing issues, originally before Obamacare, who paid for that? The insurance company did. And if the insurance company wants your business, they'll cover pre-existing, they'll give you good products, and they'll give you a good price. Thank you.
Mr. Boatman, seeing as how you're here, I'd like to direct a question to you. If elected, how would you work with congressmen and women from other parties to benefit all of your constituents?
The first thing I think I would do with congressmen and congresswomen from other parties is I would remind them that there are no parties when we get to heaven. The first thing I would tell them is that we need to do what's right while we're on the earth. And there are many things in the Democrat platform that don't stand behind what Christ would say, what our God would say, or what our grandmother would say. So the first thing I'd like to do when I get to Capitol Hill is read the Bible to Pelosi and Schumer. But the next thing I'd like to do is remind them that we need to stop thinking about what parties want and think about what the good book says. The greatest two books in this country ever written are the Holy Bible and the U.S. Constitution. We don't need to interpret them. We need to apply them. Thank you.
Any chance for rebuttal? 1 minute? Yeah.
I always get a chance to speak. I'm a former teacher. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Forget that. I use that in the classroom.
All right, as far as working with others, are you all familiar with the Indian reservation out here? Okay, you're familiar with the situation out there. Where they are providing jobs and they are providing insurance. And I can't tell you that we go to a restaurant here. We served up Manny's the other day, and our waitress said, "Thank you so much, Congressman Babin, for supporting the fairness for the Indians to have bingo. It's not, they don't serve alcohol. It's not a gaming issue out there for it to be anything further, but other tribes in the state of Texas are allowed that. And so he has supported them in that too. And the thing about working with others as members of Congress is that legislation passed in the House of Representatives on a voice vote because of the respect that Brian Babin has from all members of Congress. So he has several other bills that there's some bipartisan efforts on that. And Brian is in a Bible study in the Capitol. I just want y'all to know that, and so am I. And you would be so encouraged to know how many good people from a business background, Brian's from a medical, dental background, who really do read the Bible. They do read the Bible, and we do study the Bible, and we do pray. And we would appreciate your prayers. They're needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd work with everybody. I've got friends that are Democrats. I've got friends that are Republicans, plenty of friends that are Libertarians. I work with anybody that wants to work with me. But the key, the focus of my time in D.C., should you choose to elect me, is going to be to respect the 10th Amendment. And I won't work with anybody on anything that's not in the Constitution at the federal level. I think we need to bring back the 10th Amendment. I think we need to bring the power back to the states as our founders intended. By the way, I forgot to mention earlier, y'all are probably getting ready to vote in a primary. Well, I won't be on that ballot, but I will be on your ballot in November. We don't have a primary, so anyway, that's that.
Thank you. Mr. Abbey, I do have a follow-up question, or a different question for you. In your opinion, what is the greatest threat to the U.S.'s national security, and what is your solution to combating that threat?
Honestly, I think that our own actions and what we've done with the military over the last 20 years is probably the greatest threat to our country. I don't understand why we have 800 military bases around the world, and why that my soon-to-be 18-year-old son has known nothing but war for his entire life. Sure, there are some bad actors out there, and sure, 19 fellows from Saudi Arabia attacked us 20 years ago. But in that time, we've attacked everybody under the sun except for the Saudis. I'd bring all of our fine young men and women home and put them back to work here in this country and stay the heck out of the Middle East and North Africa.
Thank you.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. The question is, what is the greatest threat to the United States' national security, and what is your solution to combating the threat?
So I absolutely believe in peace through strength. I think we need an extremely strong military, and I think we do need a presence overseas at times to let everyone know that we're not going to stand for tyranny. I think that the greatest thing we protect in this country is our freedom and our liberty. And for our children to have a hope and a future, we have to remain strong. And so I do support our military. I do support a very strong military. I don't think we need to fight everyone's wars. Absolutely not. I think we need to protect the boundaries of our country. But I think across this globe, we also need to let people know that we stand for freedom and that we will uphold that freedom till the day Christ returns. Thank you very much.
Amen.
Well, I think I told you my husband was a veteran. My son served for a long time in the Navy. Were either of you gentlemen veterans? Did you serve in the military? Well, but you still understand, we all still understand that we must have a strong military, that I believe in peace through strength also, but you're not going to have that peace unless you have the strength. So my husband has supported rebuilding the military. I don't know if all of you know how decimated our military was after 8 years of Obama. We were at the lowest point ever that we've ever been in the American military. And so funding the military again, giving a pay raise, to our service members, getting equipment, updating our equipment systems. My son told us that they had to repair things. When you drive through East Texas, you see the barns with the old tractor and the old car and the old equipment. And that's the way my grandfather, that's where he got the parts to put things back together. Well, our military was doing that in the field in Iraq. And so we really needed to restore the military. I believe in a strong military, and I believe that it is not just the United States of America. If the American people and the American ideal does not hold, this world is going to be a very dark place. We are a city on a hill. We are not the world's policeman, but we are the world's example, and we need to stay that way. Thank you.
Mrs. Babin, thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt your applause. Feel free to applaud. Related to this topic, what is Congressman Babin's position on the appropriate funding and use of the National Guard?
My husband actually was a member of the National Guard. He was a member of the National Guard when we first met, and so I know he's very supportive of funding for the National Guard. When Brian was in the National Guard, he was airborne. Anybody airborne? He's so proud of that, jumping out of that tower, going through that training. And then when he was in dental school, we had a child unexpectedly when he was a junior. And about 9 months later, we had another child unexpectedly when he was a senior. And so he was offered an Air Force scholarship, and that's how he went into the Air Force as a captain. So he's been an enlisted man in the Texas National Guard, and he was an Air Force captain riding a dental chair in Ramstein, Germany for a couple of years. So he is very, very supportive of the National Guard. And now I will tell you, I think they do use our National Guard for some things that we should probably not ask of our military people, our military men and women who are trained for certain duties. But I will tell you, during these storms, when we saw the National Guard show up with ice and water, those of us in the communities were so glad to see them. And it was like family, and for me, it's definitely like family. They were all like my sons and daughters, and I feel very strongly about that. So I think that you can always find Brian extremely supportive of our National Guard programs.
Thank you.
Also support the National Guard and our Texas Guard as a former organized crime commander-in-chief in the Houston space. I worked with them on many occasions, and like Ms. Babin said, they are absolutely necessary and vital during times of natural disaster. They do a fantastic job. They also keep our borders and our country safe. We need to continue to support those two programs, our National Guard and our Texas Guard, and work well with them as we always have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Abbey?
Our founders feared a standing army, and I do too. I love the State Guard. I would be very supportive of any State Guard. And in times of true war and conflict, I think the president should have the opportunity to call up these state militias effectively. I'd be a huge supporter of them. A quarter mile south of my house was some of the worst flooding that went on during Harvey. They do a wonderful job. I'm a big supporter. But all in all, I keep hearing about strength, and we got to be strong. We have to have a huge military. We have a huge military. We spend $800 billion a year on our military. We spend more than the next dozen countries combined on our military. We have a strong military. I don't see exactly where it's been gutted. I have many members of my family that are in the military, but I would reduce its size significantly. And I would get us out of all these different countries around the globe that we are constantly fighting in where we have no business.
Mr. Abbey, I have another question I'll direct you.
May I say something?
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. Yes.
We fight there, so we don't have to fight here.
19 Saudi Arabian citizens attacked us, and we have destroyed over a dozen countries, but still do business and sell our weapons to Saudi Arabia.
Okay, thank you. The language of the Second Amendment states as follows: a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Yet we are witnessing an increase in mass shootings in society. How would you reconcile the language of the Second Amendment of the Constitution against this rising social threat?
I'm not exactly certain that there is a huge rise in crime. It's certainly getting a lot of attention in the media. Now we have a 24-hour media cycle. They've got to talk about something. But I wouldn't change anything in the Second Amendment. I may not have been born in Texas, but I got here as soon as I could and come and take it.
Anybody want to address Second Amendment? Yes? Okay.
I believe we need to fight to defend the Second Amendment with every step and breath. We don't need to change it. I believe the government needs to get out of our right to own guns, and we should have constitutional carry in this state and in this country. I've seen good counties across Texas step up and become sanctuary counties. We need to lean on our governor a little bit harder to become a sanctuary state. And I'm talking for the Second Amendment, not for the illegal. And then we need to lean on this country to be a sanctuary country for the Second Amendment. We need to protect that amendment at all costs. We don't need to change it. Like I said, the Constitution and Bill of Rights say what they say. They mean what they mean. We don't need to interpret it. We need to uphold it. And we should forever defend our Second Amendment rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Babbitt.
There is no stronger supporter of the Second Amendment than Brian Babin. And if anyone tells you that, it's just simply not the truth. Brian has authored some legislation that people are calling that. And some people in this room, many of you have asked me that, and I think you've heard that over and over again. But I can assure you, no one is ever going to take Brian Babin's guns. And nobody's ever going to take yours. So understanding legislation is not my department, but I want you to know that the NRA supports Brian Babin, Gun Owners of America, does not think his legislation is anything close to what you have heard as far as a red flag law. The founder of the Freedom Caucus, Mark Meadows, is a co-sponsor. Y'all see Mark on TV? Y'all know who Mark is? Co-founder of the Freedom Caucus. He's a co-sponsor. As many other members of the Freedom Caucus are. Some of the impeachment managers that went in to defend President Trump are sponsors of this law. Heritage Foundation did a big study on that. Donald J. Trump. Does anybody think that Donald J. Trump wants to take away your guns? No. Donald Trump has endorsed my husband because of the positions that he holds. So if anybody tries to tell you those things, I'm here to tell you they're not true.
Mrs. Babin, I have another question on a different topic. Many economic analysts predict that the U.S. economy, while currently strong, is heading towards another recession. What is Congressman Babin's economic plan to minimize a rise in unemployment and preserve household income?
Brian Babin's plan is to support Donald J. Trump as President of the United States. I think that President Trump, with support of congressmen like Brian Babin, has been able to change this economy so dramatically in a way that was said never could be done unless you had a magic wand. Well, next time I see President Trump, I'm just going to ask him where that magic wand is, because he's done it. Look at the stock market. Look at people who have jobs. You know, this district covers a long, wide area, and some of it goes over to the petrochemical industry there along the corridor of Interstate 10. And you know, the people, when we had those storms, they found out how important our area was. My husband spends so much time telling everybody he represents the best district in the nation. And when we had those storms and it closed down Interstate 10 and it closed down Highway 69 here, they found out it was true. Because their gas went up in Oregon. Their bread went up in New York. So these plants, now that they have been released from some restrictions through some of the Trump administration proposals, need people. There's not a problem about jobs. There's a problem about people who want the jobs and who are trained for the jobs. And that is an economy that Brian Babin supports. He's helped to build with President Trump, and it's going to go. You think it's been good so far? You just wait till these next 4 years. It's going to be great.
Thank you. Any other rebuttals or further comments? Okay.
When President Trump was running for office back in 2016, he correctly pointed out that the stock market is not the economy. This is an industry that I've spent 20 years working in the financial services business, and I can tell you the president has very, very little, if anything, to do with the stock market. It is the Federal Reserve Bank. Many of you may not know, but the Federal Reserve Bank is the third central bank we've had in our country's history. The first came about at the very founding, and within 20 years, the people understood what a ripoff it was to have a central bank based on the Bank of England model. The second central bank of the United States was killed by Andrew Jackson, crowning victory of his presidency. He was very proud of that. But unfortunately, the banksters passed one more law in 1913, bringing us our third central bank. And before that time, this country did not have a federal income tax. What I would do for the economy is I'd get out of the way. I'd get rid of the Federal Reserve Bank and get out of the way.
Thank you.
I don't work in finance, and I don't believe it takes a financial analyst to understand that Trump has done more for this country, our economy, the creation of jobs, and putting more money back in our pockets than any president in my lifetime. I'll stand with Trump, and I'll fight to make sure our economy is strong, our people are strong, and our money stays in our back pocket. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boatman, seeing as how you have the microphone, most of the members of the Escapees RV Club are full-time or heavy seasonal travelers. As such, they depend on reliable internet to remain connected with the outside world. What is your stance on net neutrality?
So I haven't studied net neutrality a lot, but I understand from what the consultants in my office tell me it's probably not a good thing. So here's what I'll say about our internet. Our internet should be like our markets. It should be open, it should be free, it should be accessible, and there should not be excessive government controls. In fact, we need to reduce about 50% of the excessive government controls we already have. Washington doesn't need to be bigger, it needs to be a whole lot smaller. It was never created to govern and control the people, it was created to work for the people. A lot of people ask me about what's the first bill I want to write as soon as I get to Congress. Well, I will tell you there is one. It's the sanctity of life bill, and I want to run pretty hard with that. I believe that border should already have been closed, and I believe we need to defend our Constitution. But the one thing I want to do when I get to D.C. is begin to diminish regulation. I contracted to the U.S. Department of Ed and the State Department of Ed for 13 years, from 1999 to 2013, and that was not about education. It was about school safety. I was the founder of this nation's first Center for Safe and Secure Schools in Harris County. I went on to run the State Safe School Center in Texas, and then I contracted to the federal government for school safety. But here's what I do know about the U.S. Department of Education, because I spent some time working with them for about 18 months to 2 years of my career. And we haven't done much since it was created. We put a man on the moon before the U.S. Department of Education was created, and we haven't done much since. The power of public education belongs to the states, and the choice of education, whether that's public, private, charter, online, or homeschool, belongs to the parent. We need to start diminishing federal government, not expanding federal government. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right.
I will repeat the question. The question is, most of the members of the Escapees RV Club are full-time or heavy seasonal travelers. As such, they depend on reliable internet to remain connected with the outside world. What is your stance on net neutrality?
I think that Brian Babin would tell you that he agrees that everything should be free and available. Unfortunately, in some of our smaller communities and some of the places perhaps where you travel, we don't have high-speed internet. And that is one thing that I've really heard him speak to our communities about, and getting that high-speed internet for our businesses, for our communities, just for us personally. We live in the woods, and that is a problem. I do not believe in regulation. My husband does not believe in regulation and has helped reduce it. Actually, his amount of action, who has helped reduce so much regulation. In fact, in the state of Texas, regulation has been reduced to that we are now energy independent. And a lot of that has to do with the state of Texas and the lack of regulations that have been, and the regulations that have been removed from our gas and oil industry. As far as education goes, I totally agree. Until you get the government out of the classroom and let people have choices, you're going to still have a problem. And that is something that absolutely needs to be addressed, and it's something that's very close to my heart. There was one other thing I was going to say about the internet, though. As far as regulation, free and independent is not controlled by Google and Facebook. And those are huge entities that are influencing everything you see and how people think, because they are limited by what is coming up on their screens. So just be aware of that. Be smart users. Everybody think for yourselves, and don't let them control, because the last thing we want is Silicon Valley running the rest of the country.
In 1994, I went to visit my buddy, who was a year older than me, and he'd already gone off to Oklahoma State. And I remember he said, "Chad, you got to come over here, man. You got to see this. We got a computer lab. We have the World Wide Web." And I'll never forget, because I told Norm, I said, "Oh, man, come on, Norm, that's just a fad. Let's go get some beers and chase some girls." I missed the mark. Thankfully, my beautiful wife of 20 years is a computer lady, and she helps take care of me at home. Otherwise, I would truly be lost. But as far as this net neutrality, I don't think the federal government has any business in the internet business. Leave it alone. I know I sound like a broken record, but frankly, if it's not in the Constitution, get out of it. We have a 10th Amendment for a reason. If the state of Texas wants to regulate the internet, let's do it here at home. That's it.
Thank you. I have one more question for everybody, and you can go first with this. Campaigning is hard. What is your favorite comfort food on the trail?
This is the beginning of my trail, but biscuits and gravy. Every Sunday morning before church as a kid growing up, I went with my grandfather, and we had biscuits and gravy every Sunday morning. Loved it. Unfortunately, just last week buried my grandmother. but those were wonderful times. Biscuits and gravy.
Well, thank you, and sorry for your loss. We don't. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking we might get a closing statement. I was going to talk about that, but I'll tell you what my favorite comfort food is, and some of you in here may know me. So if anybody knows what that is, raise your hand. All right, so I see the ones that know what that is, but I'm gonna give you a good guess. I was a policeman for a long time. What's my favorite comfort food? Absolutely, amen. So let me tell you, my favorite pie is the kind you cut in a triangle. My favorite cookies, the ones that are round. And my favorite donut's the one with a hole in it. So I love my sweets. Thank y'all.
Sit back. Thank you.
Okay, that's easy. Oh, I forget, y'all.
I've got a projection voice.
We have low ears.
Yes, okay, me too sometimes. Chocolate chip cookies. I mean, is there any contest in that? And I see that my little campaigners are somewhere probably eating all the chocolate chip cookies that y'all put out on these tables. So there may not be any left. I hope you got some beforehand. The campaign trail is fun. Like I said, it's just great to meet people, to be with people. It's like a blood transfusion for us, and it just energizes us and gets us back on the road to what's real and what's valued. And then you can go up and handle all the craziness of Washington. I wanted to bring one more thing back up that it was said, Mr. Boatman said that he was born at 27 weeks. We had a granddaughter born at 27 weeks. And we lost that granddaughter. But at the NICU, for those 6 weeks, while they were trying to save her in Houston, right down the street was an abortion clinic. It was taking babies, older, and with much greater viability. So that is something really, really near and dear to our hearts. As I told you, I had 4 children under the age of 5. I was surprised. My husband was thrilled, actually. And I was very surprised at the age of 40 to be pregnant with another one, number 5. And, that subject comes up. We were told a lot of things that were not true. But, my husband supports the heartbeat bill. He's one of the main sponsors of the heartbeat bill. That, if your heartbeat determines when you die, then your heartbeat should determine when you live. And that's very, very early in life. So there are no stronger supporters of life.
Thank you.
One things that we ask people when Brian hires people, first of all, they need to know it's a position of service. The second is, what's the most important thing in your life?
Yes.
What's the core of your life? And I think life. And I know Brian Babin believes that.
Thank you.
And whatever you hear, wherever you go in this campaign trail, remember that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. A round of applause for the candidates for U.S. Congress. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to invite the candidates up. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you. Yes, please walk in this direction.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to invite the candidates for Ninth Court of Appeals, Chuck Meyer and Jay Wright, to the stage. And Scott Goldman. Mr. Goldman. Yeah, that's okay. Yes, thank you. Thank you. You can sit in any order that you want. Again, I'm going to call you in alphabetical order for 3 minutes. So, Mr. Goldman, you'll be going first.
Can y'all hear me all right? Yes, sir. Good evening. My name is Scott Goldman. I'd appreciate your vote for Chief Justice of the 9th District Court of Appeals. How many of y'all know what the Court of Appeals does? Very, very few. Well, it's different than what you're used to. If you are in Polk County, you got county courts at law, and you got district courts. The bigger the county, the more county courts of law, the more district courts. But those are called the lower courts. Court of Appeals is called an intermediary court. And what the Court of Appeals does is when a trial is over in the lower courts, the judge comes up with a judgment. Somebody's not going to be happy. And they have the opportunity to appeal that case to the Court of Appeals. So in the Beaumont Court of Appeals, which is the 9th District, we have 4 justices. The Chief Justice, Steve McKeithen, who's retiring this year after 3 terms, 18 years, and 3 others. And what those, and the way it works is you don't get to pick and choose what case you're going to hear. You don't get to pick and choose what case you're going to offer an opinion on. The Court of Appeals clerk does that. But 3 justices are going to be on every case, and one of them is going to write or author the opinion. And what they're going to do is they're going to review that trial from the lower court, and they're going to determine, did the judge act appropriately, or did the judge abuse his discretion? Did the attorneys act appropriately or not? Did the parties act appropriately or not? Was the proper law applied and followed? Were the proper rules of evidence applied and followed? Were the proper rules of procedure applied and followed? Well, ladies and gentlemen, to be a justice, the only way you can do that is having extensive trial experience. This is not a position that you win the election and you read a book on how to be a justice. This isn't a position that you learn on-the-job training. You've either been in the trenches and done it, walk the walk, and know what you're looking for in order to determine these cases to see if they were right and you uphold the decision, or you reverse the decision and send it back down to the lower court. Now, there's 5 of us running for this bench. I know all 5 of them. We're all from Montgomery County. They're fine people. But ladies and gentlemen, I'll represent to you, I'm the only candidate with that extensive trial experience. Now, I haven't tried any criminal cases. I have no desire to be a criminal defense attorney. But our Chief Justice only handled about 15 misdemeanor trials when he was county attorney, and our other 3 justices have never tried a criminal case. But they all have had an extensive trial experience. I've got 4 opponents. 2 have never tried a case. 1 has got 20 civil trial jury trials, and one of them's got 55 civil jury trials, and I have over 300 civil jury trials under my belt. And I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Meyer?
You know, we don't disagree much on the campaign trail, but I always disagree with Scott. He's heard this many times. You don't have to be a trial attorney to be a good appellate judge. I'm an appellate prosecutor for Hardin County. I write the appeal briefs that go before this court. None of my opponents are an appellate prosecutor. Some of them have had prosecutorial experience in the past, but I'm the only current active prosecutor. What my opponents frequently, conveniently forget about is that this is a leadership position. I'm the only candidate that has ever been the chief legal officer of a publicly traded company. I was the chief legal officer of BlackBerry, and then they let me start up BlackBerry Europe on the business side. I sold BlackBerries to unsuspecting Europeans. Remember BlackBerry, the phone with the keyboard? I left there and I went to Oxford University in my 40s and got an additional degree in law. I'm the only candidate that has a Master of Laws. I passed out my resume to many of you earlier. If you didn't get it, please see me later. I'd like to point out 2 things that my opponents do not have. One, I'm the only candidate in this race who's actually drafted judicial legal opinions. I work for a federal district court judge who sits in San Antonio, and I also work for a state Supreme Court justice. Frequently, I would draft the opinion. The judge would either edit it or he'd say, take it to publication. None of my opponents can touch that experience. So I talked about leadership and I talked about experience. I also want to talk a little bit about my endorsements. I've been endorsed by the Texas Homeschool Coalition, and I've also been endorsed by Texas Right to Life. The Texas Right to Life endorsement is very near and dear to my heart because it focused on an aspect of life that typically you don't think about when you talk about right to life. And that has to do with right to medical treatment when you are nearing the end of your life. I happen to have a daughter who's 24 years old. Her name is Emily, who is in the final phase of her life. She suffers from a rare genetic disease called juvenile Batten disease. And that experience has enabled me to work with Texas Right to Life on some of these end-of-life issues. Many children with severe terminal diseases are denied medical treatment because, well, after all, they're going to die anyway. That's something that we as a society have to change. And that's my interest in the Right to Life movement. There are plenty of people that can articulate the argument that life begins at conception and flows till after birth. But very few people can make the argument from personal experience that there's a right to life at the end of your life as well. I am also a little different than my opponents in that I've done something besides be a lawyer. I have been an engineer. My first job was at the Pentagon, designing computer systems for the Department of Defense. And also, I managed over 100 people in my capacity as the head of BlackBerry Europe. I see my time is up. Please ask me any questions today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wright.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for hearing us. I'm Jay Wright. I'm running, of course, for Chief Justice. I am born and raised in Corpus Christi. So was my wife, Beverly, of 31 years. We have 4 daughters. The youngest one just graduated college in December. Thank you. And so we have finished raising them in Conroe. We moved to Conroe in 2001 and have lived in Montgomery County since that time. Now, I started out going to law school at University of Houston for 3 years, and I went back to Corpus Christi and started practicing there. And I worked in the county attorney's office for most of the first 7 years of my career, prosecuting cases, including obscenity. We prosecuted barratry, which is ambulance chasing, things like that. And I was successful. The boss made me the chief of the criminal section. I did that for 2.5 years, supervising 5 lawyers, 2 paralegals, 5 secretaries, and then handling the high profile of the difficult cases in the office. And after about 2.5 years of that, I was going to go into private practice, but the civil chief left. She later went to the Court of Appeals. The boss asked me to do the civil section chief, which I did. Same thing, supervising lawyers, writing opinions for the commissioners and the county department heads, defending the county in federal and state lawsuits. We did over 400 protective orders a year, me and my crew. And we did juvenile prosecution, where I even prosecuted juvenile felony cases, including an attempted capital murder case where a guy was nearly killed successfully. So I ran for county attorney in Corpus Christi as a Republican in '92, and if you recall, that was not a good year for Republicans, and I came in second. So I ended up going into private practice in 1993, doing the same thing. I did then, after prosecuting so many years, I did criminal defense. I did civil litigation involving business-to-business lawsuits. I did personal injury, both plaintiff and defending. I did family law cases. I've done probate trials. I've done over 140 jury trials in that time. But what's more important is I did appeals along the way. And since leaving the county attorneys, where I did a couple of dozen briefs, I've done over 117 appeals in state court. I've appealed cases to the Court of Criminal Appeals, to the Texas Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court. I have far and away the most appellate experience of anybody running, and I think that's why I've been endorsed by the Montgomery County Tea Party as the most qualified. I've been endorsed also by Texas Right to Life because I believe in the protection of life from inception to natural death within the bounds of the law. And I've been endorsed by the Freedom and Liberty Conservative PAC in Montgomery County also, because I have the broad-based experience, have done every kind of case that will go in front of the court. So whatever you have that goes to trial in this county that gets appealed to the 9th is the type of case that I've handled before. I would appreciate your support and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wright, seeing as how you have the microphone, in plain English, what is your judicial philosophy?
I am very disgusted that in 1962, the United States Supreme Court, a majority, not all of them, found that a simple school day prayer was declared unconstitutional and did not allow schools to have a prayer each day for children so that they know that they are born of God, they are a gift from God, and therefore they have value. They have value. And that was the first step in turning away from the original intent of our founding fathers. The most recent case is where they said a man can marry a man and a woman can marry a woman. They're claiming our founders intended that when they wrote the Constitution? Absolutely not. That was never the original intent. And we have to stop our judges and the courts of appeals and on the Supreme Court from moving away from what the original intent was of the writers of our Constitution and the founders of our country, who were all Christians. And they established a Judeo-Christian nation, and the only way it's going to function is to maintain that tradition. And we have to get back to it and stop these activist decisions that are changing our society through these judicial decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, first off, I want to tell you that everything that Jay just said, I agree with. I believe in. Those are my morals. Those are my ethics. That's the way I feel. However, what separates me from Jay is I'm not going to legislate from the bench. I've tried cases all over the state of Texas and all of the big municipalities: Houston, San Antonio, Corpus, Victoria, Austin, Fort Worth, Dallas. And ladies and gentlemen, before you leave, I want you to get one of my push cards and read on the back why I'm running. Because what I've seen, and I also handled over 50 appeals in 10 of the 14 Court of Appeals and the Texas Supreme Court. But what I've seen in these cases is judges and justices are not following the law. They're not enforcing the law. They're legislating from the bench. And what I will tell you that I will do when you elect me Chief Justice is I will follow the law, I will enforce the law, and I will not legislate from the bench. Thank you.
In this race, there really is a dime's bit of difference, if that much, between the candidates. I'm what is known as a textualist. It's what Justice Scalia was. You interpret the law as it's written, period. You interpret the Constitution as it was written, period. If you have to go the original intent of the drafters of the legislation, or if you have to go to the original intent of the drafters of the Constitution, that's what you do. But it should be a rare occasion. The plain language of the statute is what you should be interpreting. And that's, to that degree, I do not differ much from my opponents. I just want to briefly say in 2018, Congressman Kevin Brady put forward my name with the administration to be a judge on the Court of Federal Claims. Kevin Brady is not endorsing me. Please don't go out of this room and say he's endorsed anyone. They don't endorse in these races. Congressmen don't. But he did say to the Trump administration that I should be on the Court of Federal Claims. If I'm good enough for Kevin Brady to put forward, you can trust that I am a constitutionalist, that I'll interpret the Constitution and the statutes as they're meant to be. Thank you.
Mr. Meyer, as you have the microphone, I'll direct this question to you. What are the biggest changes you think that we need to make to our justice system, if any?
All four of my opponents are trial attorneys, and they hate this when I say this, but the cost of legal services is just too high. Too high, just like healthcare. What I intend to do as your next Chief Justice is to establish a program of mediation at the appellate level. There is a program there now, but it's very weak, and many federal appellate courts and many other appellate courts throughout the country have a mediation program that cuts down on the cost of appellate litigation. That's one thing that I would do. Other than that, I have no other further ideas, and rather than let you sit there and listen to me more, I'll pass it on to one of my opponents. Thank you.
Well, I've been a trial attorney for 31 years, and I can promise you the legal fees are too expensive. I started trial on a case in Houston Monday, went through Thursday. We picked back up this next Monday, and we're probably going to go through trial this next Thursday, too. There's $7,320 in damages, and the plaintiffs are seeking $250,000 in attorney's fees. But ladies and gentlemen, no matter how inequitable that sounds, as a justice on the Court of Appeals, you are to follow and enforce the law. We've already got a mediation program set up in the Court of Appeals. The court's running efficiently. They're putting away as many appeals as they're being filed. And I'll tell you this, the 9th District Court of Appeals in Beaumont is the most conservative Court of Appeals in the state of Texas, and I want to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wright?
Thank you. I agree with the Ninth Court of Appeals is now, wasn't originally, probably the most conservative court because of frankly, the Democrat turnover in some of the large counties that have courts of appeals. And I think it's important that we maintain that. Mediation is something that even a Court of Appeals can order and does order, although it's voluntary in these cases, and that helps to reduce the attorney's fees. And I think that attorneys who want oral argument should be able to have that upon the request so that, because they can make points in their oral arguments, because our Court of Appeals rarely has oral arguments on cases. But I think the biggest change we need is what I've said before, and that's to get back to the original intent of our founding fathers when we're interpreting constitutional issues. And it's a philosophy that's different from textualist or strict constructionist. If the Dred Scott decision in the 1800s, where they said a black person is not a human being, wasn't overturned for nearly 60 years. As an originalist would say, that was not the original intent when they wrote our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence. That was a wrong decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Goldman, can you describe an instance in which you faced an ethical dilemma and how you resolved it?
Yes, I can. I tried a case last year in San Antonio in front of a very liberal Democratic justice, in front of a very liberal Democratic attorney who happened to be president or former president of the San Antonio Bar Association, on a auto accident case involving uninsured, underinsured motorists. And during the course of that trial, the plaintiff's attorney convinced the judge that he should be entitled to the jury to award him attorney's fees for the case. And I come up with this problem in these liberal jurisdictions all the time. I had 4 or 5 Supreme Court cases that says you cannot recover attorney's fees in this auto cause of action. I had one from the Texarkana Court of Appeals that my firm trialed, I did the appeal of, that said the same thing. And I stood there and listened to this Democratic judge and this Democratic attorney say, well, we don't have to follow the Texas Supreme Court precedent. We don't have to follow the Texarkana Court of Appeals precedent. We're San Antonio Court of Appeals. So they got what they wanted, and we immediately appealed it. I mean, the unethical conduct was by the judge and the attorney. Not following Supreme Court precedent for decades. We appealed it. San Antonio Court of Appeals, which is a Democratic justices, went along with the trial court, appealed it to the Texas Supreme Court. That's what I did because of the lack of ethics in the San Antonio District Court and the San Antonio Court of Appeals. And ladies and gentlemen, the Texas Supreme Court took my case on expedited appeal to put a stop to these courts and these justices not following and enforcing the law, but legislating from the bench. And there's a Supreme Court case right out of the Woodlands that told them they could not do what they were doing in this case. And they said, if the prevailing party is entitled to recover attorney's fees, it's up to the legislature to do, not the courts. So I deal with unethical conduct all the time when I try these cases. People say, how do you get a fair trial when you're dealing with judges like this? And what I tell them is, thank God for the juries. Because the juries are the judges of the facts. And the juries see through what's going on in the trial by the other attorneys, by the judges. And 9 times out of 10, ladies and gentlemen, the juries get it right. And when I've got a verdict from a jury that's correct, 9 times out of 10 or more, the judge has to follow that verdict and give me a correct judgment. And that's how I get a fair trial. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments yet, please? 1 minute for additional comments? Or, pardon?
I haven't gone yet on this one. I haven't answered this question.
The question was directed to Mr. Goldman, so
Oh.
if you'd like to have
I thought you wanted all of us to answer.
if you'd like to, you can take a minute to.
Okay, I'll just take a very brief minute. One
Thank
thing
you,
I
please.
didn't mention to you before is I'm a patent attorney and a small business lawyer. And I have had ethical disputes that I have to resolve, but I resolve them more through the business community than I have by taking a case to court. But there was one time in which someone insisted that I file a patent application on an invention that, through my research, there was no way they were going to give a patent, and I refused to do so. I would have been probably $7,500 in my pocket had I done so, but I refused to do that because it was an unethical practice of law before the patent office. And the only other thing I'll say in that regard is, as I mentioned to you, I'm an assistant district attorney for Hardin County. There was one case that was very troubling to me. It ended up being resolved by at trial with the death penalty imposed. It was a case of child abuse and murder. And it was a very difficult ethical decision as to whether or not the defendant should have been afforded a DNA kit. And I worked very hard on that opinion, and thankfully he was convicted and sent to the death penalty.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wright?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I can repeat the question. Please describe an instance in which you faced an ethical dilemma and how you resolved it.
Oh boy, there are a lot of those in the practice of law I've had over the last 34 years. And I think the biggest one and the most common one is when you have a client and you find out after you've been on the case for a while that something they told you was not true, was not, well, we should say not accurate, okay? And through discovery, you find this out. What is your duty to the court and to society? We have a duty not to present a lie to the court, and that's whether it's a civil case, a family law case, a probate case, or a criminal case. And at that point, and what I have always done is counsel my client and say, well, we've got to do something with the case based on that truth, because I'm not going to present a lie to the court. And every attorney is supposed to do that under our code of ethics. And if your lawyer doesn't do that, then you should get another lawyer. But I think that needs to be upheld, and that's the way I have practiced law the last 34 years. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one more question for the three of you. 30 seconds or less? Yeah, well, we can start with you. If you had to do something, if you had to have any job outside of something connected with the legal community, what job would that be?
Oh, that's easy. I decided that years ago, and I told my 4 daughters, if I had it to do all over again, I think I would be a nurse. A male nurse, but a nurse. Because you can work in so many fields. You can work in an office, you can work in the operating room, you can work in a hospital, you can work in a school. And everything you do, you're helping people. You're helping people every day. And that's what keeps me going. I've got to do something that's helping people. I can't just do it for myself. But that would be my suggestion.
Thank you.
Well, my initial reaction would be education. My undergraduate, believe it or not, is in ag education. My master's is in education. I taught at Tarleton State University for a number of years, and I love the teaching profession. My wife's a teacher. It's the most important, I think, job in the world with unbelievable amount of work and least amount of pay and least amount of assistance from parents and administration. But if I had another choice, it would be charitable work, which I've done for years. I do a lot of charity barbecues. I do a lot of charity barbecues when we have hurricanes, floods, things of that nature, and I thoroughly enjoy helping and serving others. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've done a variety of different things. It's a little hard to choose because all the gigs that I've had in my life have been good. I probably would go back and work at the Pentagon as a civilian engineer again, if I could do that over again. It was a heady time for someone who was 23 years old to be with colonels and captains in the Navy and designing computer systems to let the nation's leaders know when we're under nuclear attack. Technology has transformed itself tremendously from those days. We even used teletype lines as part of our project that were not being used. I'm out of time, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, a round of applause for the candidates for Ninth Quarter of Appeals. Thank you gentlemen, very much. Awesome. Thank you. Pleasure. That's great. Now I have two microphones. Hang on. It's a very dangerous, and most of you in this room know me, most dangerous thing you can do is hand me a microphone. You'll never get it back. Give me two of them, at this time, I'm going to invite the two candidates for district judge to the stage. So Judge Jones and Mr. Wells, you'll head this way. Judge, if you'd like to start with your 3-minute prepared remarks. The one to the right, I think, is active right now. The one to the left is our standby.
Hello. Yes, it does work.
Oh, good.
My name is Casey Jones. I'm the 411th District Judge. You elected me in 2012, overwhelmingly re-elected me in 2016, and no matter how much we begged the legislature, they refused to give us 6-year terms. So I'm up again for re-election in 2020. I was born and raised here in Livingston. I graduated from Livingston High School, went to Texas A&M for undergraduate. When I graduated from A&M, I moved to Boston, or actually I stayed home for a year and taught because for some reason my parents wouldn't let me take a year off from school and not do anything. Like, no, you have to have a job. So I had a job. But my mother and grandmother, who were teachers, and my sister teaches currently, they were all correct that teaching's probably not the career for me. I had already decided to go to law school, but I took a year off before I went. When I went to law school in Boston, Massachusetts, which is a wonderful place to live and a great, great place to learn and see American history and where it all started. But I'm a small town girl at heart and discovered that I like Texas winter. I do not like actual winter. Amen. So I moved back home. When I moved back home, the job opening that was available was an assistant DA for your then district attorney, John Holloman. So I went to work for the DA's office here in Polk County. I worked there for 10 years. I prosecuted everything from speeding tickets to capital murder cases. I did appellate work for the office. I handled the CPS cases for the office. I advised Commissioner's Court and handled some of the civil issues for the county at that time. In 2012, I decided it was time for me to serve the community that raised me in a different capacity, so I decided to run for the 411th District Judge. As I said earlier, you elected me in 2012. The biggest thing that I did when I took the bench was that I took the CPS cases back to local control. The district covers Polk, San Jacinto, and Trinity counties. At that time, the CPS cases, Child Protective Services cases, were being heard by an outside visiting judge, someone who wasn't elected by the people of the district. I thought those cases needed to be heard by the person that this district elected, the person that knows this district and that knows how y'all feel about things and will institute your values in these cases so that your children and your grandchildren and your neighbors' children and the children of this district would be served by the people and the person that you elected, not someone sent in from the outside. I have the experience necessary to do the job. I've been doing the job for 8 years. You deserve a judge that is dedicated to being the 411th District Judge, not someone that's dedicated to running for judge and runs in 2014 for the County Court of Law, ran in 2016 against me for this job and then ran again in 2018 for the 258th Court and is now running again in 2020 for the 411th judge. You deserve a judge that's the 411th judge, not someone who simply runs for judge. Thank you very much. Early voting is still going on, and Election Day is March 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. Well,
Howdy. My name is John Wells. I'm running for 411th District Court. This covers Trinity County, Polk County, and San Jacinto County. I'm a lifelong Republican and constitutional conservative. Somewhere in our history, a judge upheld the Second Amendment, which allows us to keep our guns. And also somewhere in our history, some judges upheld the Obamacare mandate. Y'all remember that? Yeah. It flew by because they called it a tax. So they said it was okay. As you can see, judges hold a lot of power, but we need them to uphold the Constitution. It's critical that we elect judges of uncompromising integrity, ethics, and character, judges that will follow the law and defend the Constitution. I didn't go to high school here, but my dad was born in Livingston. There's my dad right there. Remember that? He's an ex-Marine. My great-grandpa and my grandpa are buried here in Polk County. I grew up over in Sabine County, which is a couple of counties over near Louisiana. My family history is 200 years in Texas. We were there since 1820. Over there in Sabine County, I had a great uncle who was sheriff and Texas Ranger. I worked my way through high school and I worked my way through college. After I graduated from Texas A&M, I worked in construction management. I was in charge of contracts worth millions of dollars. And actually, we were working on a chemical plant project when I started law school. I had to start law school taking night classes and going downtown Houston. At the same time I was taking night classes and working a full-time job, I was supporting my family. Since then, I've run my own business and I've worked for myself in private practice. I'm a trial attorney, and every week I'm in the district courts, Polk County, Trinity County, San Jacinto County. I've handled all kinds of cases, criminal cases, juvenile cases, CPS cases. One time I was at church at a chili dinner and I met a guy and I thought he looked familiar. And I realized I had helped him out and he had thanked me for negotiating a plea deal. He actually had to go to prison for a little while, but it turned out to do him some good. He got off drugs and he had a job and he was back on track. Plus he was in church, so I guess he was doing pretty good. My wife Tatiana's back there. We've been married for 16 years. She has a chemical engineering degree. She works at Georgia Pacific in Camden, which is just north of Livingston there. We have 2 children. The son is almost 2. He's not here anymore because he's on timeout. If he was in here now, he'd probably be very disruptive. And our daughter is 14. She'll start high school next year, so I ask for all y'all's prayers. I'm a Christian, a member of the NRA, member of the Sons of the Republic of Texas. I can stand here and talk all day, but I think I'm about to run out of time. But I ask you to do the research. Research me, Google my opponent. As judge of the 411th Court, I will restore integrity, ethics, and justice. I will follow the law and uphold the Constitution and laws of the state of Texas. Thank you.
Mr. Wells, seeing as how you have the microphone.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, you are. Yes. I don't mean to tread over your applause, but if elected, in plain English, would you describe what your judicial philosophy would be?
To follow the Constitution and the laws of the state of Texas. I will not play favoritism with attorneys. The outcome of your case will not depend on who your attorney is. It won't depend on who you are. It will determine the law and the facts of the case. I will listen to the facts of the case and make rulings based on the law and the Constitution.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Judge?
You hear people complain all the time on various news stations and probably when you talk to people about judges legislating from the bench. That is not a trial court's job or any judge's job. A judge's job is to apply the law and the facts to the case. The law was written in Austin. We apply the laws to the facts, and we decide what happens based on those 2 things and those 2 things only. You don't legislate from the bench. I haven't in 8 years, and I will continue not to do that. I will decide the case on the facts and the law.
Judge, what do you perceive as the greatest obstacle to justice, if any?
as the appellate judges who are running said, the cost of legal representation. We have a very healthy court-appointed attorney pool here in the district in all 3 counties that the county pays for indigent defendants. It can always be bigger, and everybody can always do a better job at anything they do in life. But the cost of people hiring attorneys, especially in civil cases and things like that, where they're not entitled to court-appointed counsel, where they have to hire their own counsel, the cost of litigation would be the biggest obstacle.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Wells, a minute for remarks. Yes, I will. What do you perceive as the greatest obstacles to justice, if any?
The greatest obstacles to justice is the integrity and ethics of the judge who's sitting on the bench.
Okay. Thank you. Well, while you're there, I'll direct a question to you, and that's all right. Essentially, we're going to probably direct a question to you, then she'll have it.
Yes.
So, owing to the remarks that you just made, would you describe for us an instance when you faced an ethical dilemma and how you resolved it?
Well, I recently faced an ethical dilemma, and it wasn't much of a dilemma because I witnessed judicial misconduct in a room full of lawyers, and I filed a complaint with the commission, which is still pending.
Okay. Thank you. Remarks?
I'm sure everyone in this room has had instances, and probably numerous instances in their life where they faced ethical dilemmas and hard decisions to make. And unfortunately, we don't always make the right decision. None of us do. But what you do is you look back when you face one and see what you did in the past and make sure you make a better decision the next time.
Thank you. While you're here and have the microphone. Well, I've got another round or so.
Okay.
Okay. What criteria do you use for deciding whether to impose or affirm sentences outside of standard ranges?
You're not allowed to deviate from the range of punishment. The 411th District Court handles only felony crimes. It doesn't handle misdemeanors. State jail felonies, third-degree felonies, second-degree felonies, first-degree felonies, and then capital cases. The ranges of punishment of those are set by the legislature in Austin, and you listen to the facts of the case, any mitigating evidence there may be, and you decide somewhere within that range of punishment. You don't deviate from that range of punishment. Deviating from the range of punishment would be not following the oath of office that you've taken.
Thank you. Mr. Wells?
Deviation from the range of punishment will be an illegal sentence. For example, a third-degree felonies, minimum 2 years TDC, maximum 10 years TDC. You sentence somebody to 11 years, that's an illegal sentence, automatic appeal, doesn't even go through, lots of problems. So you consider each case and the facts of each case. You consider the person's criminal history when determining a sentence, and you have to stay within the range, but there's a lot of factors that go into it. If somebody has an extensive criminal history, you may, as a judge, lean toward the maximum end. If it's their first offense or first serious offense, you may lean toward the minimum end. So,
Okay, thank you.
I'll stay for the next question.
Thank you. What are your views on whether the court as a whole deals effectively with racial and gender bias?
As a whole, I can't say that I've seen any bias for racial or gender bias in the court.
Excellent. Excellent. Judge?
I don't know that there's an effective answer to that question. We certainly hope, I'm sure all of us do, that we look at people as individuals and judge them only on what they have done or what they're alleged to have done and what the evidence shows, and don't take other factors into account. You just rule on what is in front of you, and that's the facts of the case and their history and things like that, not individual characteristics such as race or gender.
Excellent. Follow up to that. What reforms, if any, do you support to increase access to justice for all?
As I said earlier, we have a very active court-appointed defense pool here in the district. We are always encouraging other attorneys to take those appointments. The state bar has a good program encouraging private practice attorneys to take pro bono cases so that they will take some cases for free. Other than that, the court's not in the business of assigning counsel to things that are not court-appointed cases. So all we can do really is encourage attorneys and make it easy for them to take pro bono cases to the extent that we can.
Thank you.
Well, I have taken a few cases on pro bono in the past, but access to justice, most people, if you're poor enough, you can get appointed attorney by the court. If you make too much money, based on guidelines, they require you to at least go visit with attorneys, see if you can afford to hire them. Tax season, usually a lot of people get their money, tax returns back, so they're able to go hire their own attorney. But I believe citizens in this area have good access to justice.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask you both one more question, same question I asked the candidates for Court of Appeals. All right. If you had to pick a job outside of the legal community, what job would you choose to hold?
Well, I got my degree from Texas A&M in construction science, and I spent some years in construction management, and I enjoyed that, but I wanted to do something less stressful, so I went to law school. But I'm a lawyer. So, but if I had to do anything, I would want to be a lawyer. If not, I would like to be an astronaut.
Okay, fair enough. Judge Jones, thank you.
If I didn't have the job that I have, where I'm privileged enough to serve the people of the community that raised me, I'd want to be a White House photographer. You get to be there and see all the decisions being made and take pictures of it, but not have to make the decision yourself. But you're there when history is made. Unfortunately, I'm a very bad photographer, so that will never happen.
Thank you both. A round of applause for the candidates for district judges. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask the candidates for sheriff to join me on stage. We have our sheriff candidates.
Okay, the real deal actually got here, y'all. If we'd waited, I wouldn't have had to speak. But I'm glad I did, because it was fun. Brian? Yes. He just wanted to say hello to everybody.
You did a good job.
Thank you.
She can get more votes than me. I know.
Tell him I need a raise.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to apologize. Oh, you got a mic?
I got a mic. We'll
Yeah, I
give
want
you
to
a mic.
apologize for being late. We have 9 counties, and I've been in 3 counties today. I apologize, and sorry I wasn't here on time, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your trust. It's one of the greatest privileges in the world to be serving as the representative for the great 36th congressional district of the 9 counties of East Texas, and it goes all the way down into Houston. I see some Alabama Cushatas here. I'm very proud to be helping you folks. We got it through the House. Now we just got to get it through the Senate. We'll have NOSCA on a permanent basis. And it's real good to be here, and I want to invite everybody to come see us in Washington. Probably not enough time to tell you that about all the things that we've been doing, but I've been endorsed by President Trump. I'm co-chairman of the House Border Security Caucus. That's the most dangerous thing this country faces, is an open border. And I'm a veteran, and there can be nothing more important than us rebuilding our military that has been so badly depleted during the 8 years of the previous administration. And we've been doing that. So good things are happening. I've never seen an economy this good in my entire life. We got the lowest unemployment rate since 1969. And we've got trillions of dollars have come home, and we've got good things happening in America. We got to get this president reelected, and we got to put us back in the majority in the House of Representatives so Ms. Pelosi can start getting maybe playing second fiddle. She controls the agenda, and we got to get that agenda back. So thank you so much. God bless. One other thing, because I'm one of you folks. I'm on Social Security, okay? I'm a retiree, supposed to be anyway, but now I'm working about 18 hours a day. But I'm one of you, and this is something that I want to tell you. You paid into your Medicare and your Social Security, and nobody's going to take that away. And you also have the First and Second Amendment rights in the Constitution. Nobody's going to take your guns away either. And so I'm one of you. Just want to say thank you for your support. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, continuing with our stated order, I'm going to invite Paul Kane to come up and give 3 minutes on himself and his platform. Again, this is for the office of sheriff.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Kane, and I'm a candidate for sheriff of Polk County. Pleasure to be here today. Good to see everybody. I started my career, let me first say that my wife, my beautiful wife Renee, is here with me today. She's been with me every step of this campaign. She's not been ahead of me or behind me. She's been right beside me. And we've already made the decision that win or lose, we did this together. And I appreciate her very much. I started my career here in Polk County in 1981 as a reserve deputy. Worked 2 years as reserve, was hired full-time, started in the jail. After working a short period in the jail, was transferred to the street where I worked street patrol, midnights for about 5 years. Worked on up into supervision, into criminal investigations. And around end of 1991, I went to work for the Texas Attorney General's office in Beaumont, Texas. Dan Morales was the Attorney General at the time. During my tenure with the Attorney General's office, I worked under 3 Attorney Generals. General Morales, and of course Greg Abbott, who's now our governor, worked under him, and Senator Cornyn when he was Attorney General. Spent a couple of years in Beaumont, transferred to Woodville, Texas, and opened an office there. And after about 7 or 8 months there, took a project in Austin where I would work the next 3.5 years in Austin, Texas. Worked for the Attorney General's office for about 19.5 years, and I left the Attorney General's office to attend employment with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, and that's where I was at when I actually retired. With the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, I started out at the Mark Stiles unit in Beaumont, which everybody knows that's a high security, maximum security unit. Made sergeant. After making sergeant, was transferred to Rose Sharon, Texas, where I worked in the Region 3 Director's Office for about 4.5 months. After that, I was transferred back to Beaumont, Texas as an administrative segregation lieutenant and worked there for the next 14 months or so when I decided to retire. When I retired from the state, Sheriff Hammock, who I appreciate, have supported him greatly. Sheriff Hammock invited me back, and I'm currently employed with the Sheriff's Office as a work crew supervisor. And Sheriff, I wish you the best in your retirement.
Thank you. Thank you. we're going to go in alphabetical order by last name. Yep. 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 That's you. Yep. Yeah.
Is it working? Yep.
Yes. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mark Jones. I'm running for sheriff of Polk County. I got involved in this race because I felt like I could make a difference. I wanted to get involved. I wanted to provide you as the voters an opportunity to look at different candidates, to judge us and look and see what you want to do as far as the future of Polk County law enforcement, the future of Polk County public safety. To tell you a little bit about myself, I was raised in Groveton, Texas. Moved to Polk County. I was a deputy sheriff for Trinity County Sheriff's Office for 2.5 years. I started there in 1997. I was 21 years old. Came to Polk County in May of 2000 as a patrol deputy. I worked till 2004 as a deputy, and then I went into CID as a detective for the Polk County Sheriff's Office. I left the Polk County Sheriff's Office working under Sheriff Hammock. I went to work for the District Attorney's Office as a felony investigator. I worked in the felony division till 2010, so 4 years as an investigator with the District Attorney's Office. Left the District Attorney's Office to take a position with back with Sheriff Hammock again as a patrol lieutenant, where I've been since 2010. So for 10 years, I've had some experience working in patrol, working and seeing the different growth of law enforcement, public safety in Polk County. I have some ideas. I have some experience in the I guess in the field or in the administration, kind of mid-level administration with the sheriff's office. I know there's a big spiel about change. I'm here to tell you, I change every day. I get a day older every day. There's change. So there's change, and then there's also change in direction. Change is in every day we're going to do better. Every day we're going to do things different. That's the kind of change I'm offering. I want to build on what we have. I think we have a great department. I'm proud to say that. I'm proud to work for Sheriff Hammock. And I too, I wish him all the best. He's done a great job as a sheriff. But every day we want to change. And that's the kind of the change I'm trying to tell you. I don't think we need to change directions. I think we need to change and keep growing. And if you elect me as sheriff, January 1, January 2, there's going to be some change in the right direction as far as what I want to do, move things in that direction. I'm proud to be here speaking in front of y'all today. I've been looking forward to this day. I understand there's 10,000 people watching on that camera. I'm glad you're not in this room because I think we'd all be even more nervous, but I understand there's 10,000 people on that camera, so I'm proud to be talking to them as well, because all of y'all we can't get to individually. All of y'all, this is our message. This is how we get to y'all. So I want to thank Escapees for hosting this event. I'm super proud to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to say give it honor to God, and then give it honor to all of you all who are here today, as well as my family. Give honor also to these candidates who are here with me. I appreciate you all coming out for today, because today is, I think this is a very important. I think this is something that, not discounting any of the other elections that's here today or candidates, but this one is, I feel, is very important, not just because I'm in it, but because it deals with the criminal justice system. It deals with how law enforcement will be handled, and then how it will be supervised, and how the executives will carry themselves here in your county. My name is Byron Lyons, and I am, at this point in time, serving as the Chief Deputy of the Sheriff's Office here in Polk County. And I have served in that position for the past 15 years under the direction of Sheriff Kenneth Hammock, who I greatly appreciate. I've been here all my life. I've been in EMS, police department, the DA's office, and now back at the Sheriff's Office. Training, I've served on the board of chief deputies, the Texas Chief Deputies Association, which is the chiefs from all over the state of Texas. Not only served as a board, but I also served as the president of that board, of that association. I have extensive training in executive training, budgeting. One that I am most proud of is the training I received from the FBI, reference to executive training, law enforcement training. The class that I am very proud of, that the County of Polk sponsored me and paid for me to be at. Because what it did, it gave me an opportunity to open my eyes up about having or looking at a different way of doing law enforcement. The way we did law enforcement back in the day when I first started, those days are not working anymore, because crime has evolved. And if we're going to be efficient, if we're going to be effective, then that means that we're going to have to evolve. And that's what some of the training that I have been taking part of in the last 10 years is preparing myself. Not even knowing back then, but preparing myself for today, that to one day, if chosen by you, to be your sheriff of Polk County. The sheriff of Polk County who's coming in today is going to have to be an out-of-the-box thinker. He's going to have to be someone who's willing to look across the board and look across the plane and look at other avenues, not just be set in on how we did things in the past, because those things are not going to work anymore. We got to be willing to turn. The one thing I got out of the school from the FBI was one of the things we have to do is we got to start turning to our communities. We're going to start communicating better with the citizens of Polk County. And I feel like those are some of the things that we have failed in, is that we failed to communicate better. We set ourselves on an island. Well, if we want to be efficient, we want to be effective, we want to be able to protect you, your property, and your families, and we're going to have to start talking with each other. We're going to have to start communicating, because you see the problems that are out there. All we're doing is being proactive and just responding to the issues. But if we talk amongst one another, we will see those problems. You will be able to bring them to the table to us before they even get there. And I appreciate this time, and I do want to be your sheriff of Polk County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I appreciate each and one of you sitting here, because it's been a long time hearing all these candidates. My name's Mike Nettles. I'm running for sheriff of Polk County. The reason I'm running for sheriff, we can do better. I've been married to my wife 36 years. She's unable to be here. About 2 months ago, before this was scheduled, we agreed to go to San Antonio and take care of my grandkids this weekend, because they were having to go to jobs with their companies they work with. So my wife's in San Antonio. A few of the other things that we've been to, my wife hadn't been able to be a part of it because her sister's going through breast cancer. And that's important to me, her being with her sister. We have 2 sons, 2 grandkids. I've lived in Polk County all my life. I was raised right up here on Jack Nettles Road, going back into Livingston past Red Barn. That land's been in the Nettles family since the 1850s. I'd like to say that all my life of being in law enforcement, from 19 years on, I've never left out of law enforcement. I've worked for Polk County Sheriff's Office. I started off in the jail division, patrol division, CID, narcotics, chief deputy, under other sheriffs. In that time, I've always been big on supporting the community and giving back my time in basketball, baseball with my kids, coaching other kids. I would like to say that as sheriff, I would like to see us reduce burglaries and thefts, work major narcotics dealers in Polk County, because that does put a big burden on us. Animal control is a big problem. We need to address animal control. Ignoring it is not going to be where I'm going to stand. And as your sheriff, I will be a working sheriff. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Nettles, as you're here, let me direct the first question to you, and again, don't mean to tread over your applause. Would you please tell us how your life, organizations, activities outside of law enforcement have helped further you in your law enforcement career and prepared you to be sheriff of Polk County?
Well, I've been on quite a few boards. I've been on the Livingston Lions Booster Club as president. I've been on Polk County Peace Officers Board as president. I've served on the Escapees Care Board. I'm currently on there now. I've been on the Livingston ISD School Board. I've been a Lions Club member, Lions Club International, currently still there.
Thank you.
And there's probably a few more, but I'm not sure.
Thank you. I'll open it up to the rest of the field if you want to share a minute's worth of remarks about how maybe activities outside of your law enforcement duties have prepared you in your law enforcement career, prepared you to be a sheriff.
Okay, thinking back, I actually served 9 years with the Big Sandy Independent School District Board of Trustees. I believe 7 years of that was as the board's vice president. One of the things that I didn't mention earlier, I am a member of the NRA. I support our Second Amendment. I'm a member of Trinity Lodge 14 in Livingston, past master. I served with the Texas State Guard for 3 years. Those of you military guys that are here, I was an E6, served as a sergeant. Learned a lot through those folks. I at one time was on the volunteer fire department out at Signo, where I currently reside, or where I've resided most of my life, was raised out there. And any type of community involvement, Big Sandy School. Of course, we played basketball. I guess the only day that I ever missed school, I went to school one day in the air, somebody had let there out of basketball, so I went to the house. But really enjoyed my time there, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm glad I got the follow-up question, because I know some of you guys are probably thinking, man, it's not a long question. It's not something we normally do, and then these little cars down here are just throwing us off.
You know the questions get harder as we go, right?
I'm telling you.
Okay.
I'm a past president for the Polk County Peace Officer Association. A lot of law enforcement, we dedicate our lives to helping people. So when you ask some of the things that you do in your life, what have you done to help advance your law enforcement career? But I think probably the biggest thing is training. Prior to starting as a deputy sheriff, I worked for Sam Houston State University Police Department as an assistant. As an assistant, but training is a big deal. Taking the right courses, taking the right training, taking the right classes, learning how to handle the law, learning how to handle the question, learning what to do when the chips are down, when things are going on, learning what to do. And as your sheriff, I think that's going to be important when that phone call is made to the sheriff. Should those deputies breach that door and go inside? Should those deputies make that arrest? Should these things be taking place in the public? And I think training is probably the biggest thing that you do outside of law enforcement, learning how to handle things, learning how to handle situations.
Thank you. Mr. Lyons?
I guess organizational outside of the law enforcement, I've served on the Livingston Independent School District School Board, member of the Travelers Rest Lodge number 55, served on several different boards relating to scholarships and overseeing scholarships to be awarded to our children. I think some of those things have really helped me, but the one most thing that I've done outside of law enforcement that has helped me the most in my career now is that I'm a minister of the gospel and have been for the past, this past April would have been 11 years. Well, this coming April, I'm sorry, will be 11 years. It is because that has opened my eyes that everything that I see is that I need to, instead of judging people, always remember that they're human, and that if God forgives, then we have to be able to forgive, and we do our jobs in a forgiving manner, but we do still yet uphold the law. I think those are the things that I've done to help me in my career.
Well, thank you. And seeing as how you have the microphone, I'll direct the next question to you. And it's essentially a two-part question. Excuse me. What do you think is the most important skill of being a good sheriff? And what is Polk County's most pressing law enforcement issue? So best skill, and most pressing issue.
I think one of the best skills that a sheriff must have is that, all the training and things that I brought up is important, it's good. But I think to be a sheriff, your most important skill that you're going to have is to be a listener. You have to be able to listen, not to just your people, but you also have to be willing to listen to the public, listen to those citizens who have voted you in to serve them, to protect them. Unfortunately, sometimes our sheriffs, as these different classes that I go to and teach, is that sometimes we allow ourselves to get outside of the box, or we allow ourselves to get stuck in the box rather, and we stop listening. And when we stop listening, we stop communicating. When you stop communicating, then you're not efficient, you're not productive. So I think listening, which will be able to allow you to communicate, is one of the most important skills of a sheriff. And one of the most important, I feel, the most pressing issue that we have, because this issue allows the other problems that we have to grow, is the lack of manpower. And the lack of manpower, regardless of what everybody else says, you can't be efficient with solving all the burglaries. You can't be efficient with combating the drugs on the streets. You can't be efficient with being there when the thefts or your time for arriving on your scenes. None of these things are going to be efficient. None of these things are going to be well if you don't have the manpower to be able to do what you need to do.
Thank you. I'll invite any of the other candidates who would like to have a 1-minute remark on the topic of most important skill of being a sheriff and Polk County's most pressing law enforcement need.
As being sheriff, I think we've got to bring leadership back to our employees and the people of the Polk County. Turnover is terrible. We have too much turnover. Right now, I think we've got about 9 positions at the county. You can go on the website and see 6 jailers, 2 deputies, and a dispatcher. That's a lot of turnover for the percent of employees. You've got to let your employees know you appreciate them. Another big thing is you got to get out there and work with them. I want to be a working sheriff. Over the years, I've got awards from the director of the FBI for assisting them out on the streets, not going to classes, but working hand in hand with the FBI on criminals in Polk County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back in April of last year, when I made the decision to run for sheriff, it wasn't an overnight decision. It was something that I thought about for some time. And as I began to talk to people, I saw a need, and the need was nobody listens to us. We call. Sometimes we get somebody out here, sometimes we don't. So instead of making campaign promises, I made a pledge to the people of Polk County, and that was to be a full-time working sheriff for all of the people with an open-door policy. If you have a problem, I need to know about it. If my men make a mistake, I want to know about it. And I learned that we've got to listen, and I've seen it. In the time that I've been back, I've seen it. We don't take time to listen to the problems, and we have to. That's the only way that we can solve the issues.
Thank you.
I think the toughest job in being a sheriff is probably diplomacy, listening, open door. All those things are absolutely the problem. But diplomacy, when somebody comes through that open door to tell you something, are you going to know what to do with it? And can you have the diplomacy to get some change done? Do you have the diplomacy to go to the person? Do you have the contact? Do you have the people that can you reach out to them? Can you sit down at a table with the person that can make that change, can fix that? That's what I think as your sheriff, I think diplomacy is important. The biggest problem that we do have in the county is the presence of law enforcement. I understand, I respect that. That's one of my jobs now. I'm part of the patrol division, and I understand we are shorthanded. But I hate offering up excuses to the people. I want to make some changes in manpower. I want to make some adjustments inside the sheriff's office that are going to make more officers available on the streets. I think that's a huge problem. When people say they didn't show up, when these other candidates are saying they didn't show up, that's one of the problems that we've got to handle.
Well, Mr. Jones, that's how you have the microphone, and based on what you just said, I'll direct this question to you. Every county has only a finite amount of money, right? So budgets become a concern. Based on what you just said, what changes, policy or specifics would you make if elected sheriff to stretch our taxpayer dollars and still deter crime?
There's several things that we've got to do. I'm glad I got this question, but I'll talk fast. There's several things that we got to do. We've got to restructure. There's some deputies that are working in positions in that sheriff's office currently that I feel like we can utilize civilian employees for. Freeing up those deputies that are doing civilian jobs as far as clerical work, different things that are inside that office, that we've got to free them up and put them back out on the streets. I have a plan to fix that. I have a plan to fix some of we're big, we're bulky. I don't want to go to Commissioner's Court asking for more money because there is no more money to ask for. We're big, we're bulky. I want to slim up what we're doing inside that sheriff's office. I want to take some of the manpower that we have that's working in there now, and I want to put them in different areas that we can put them more productive for the people out on the streets, put them more productive for the people that are needing those officers in their communities and in their subdivisions. What was the second part of that?
In a sense, it was how would you stretch our taxpayer and still deter crime? Yeah.
The other part of that is grants. In the last 4 years, the sheriff's office, I'm one of the grant coordinators with the sheriff's office. We reach out for grants all the time. We've reached out for $340,000 in grants in the last 4 years, and we've gotten all of them. So we're putting equipment on the streets. We're putting different things in the county that we're stretching your taxpayer dollars with grants. We're actively doing that. The other part that we can do is our reserve program. We've got a reserve program right now that it's reeling a little bit. We've got to build it back up. Once you get that reserve program built back up, those are hours that we're going to put deputies that are, they're I guess you'd call them part-time law enforcement officers. With that reserve program, I think we can stretch our tax dollars by putting them to work. There's also other ways we can do. We can take some finances in-house, narcotic seizure money. I want to put that to work for the public. I want to take some narcotic seizure money, put it back in salary, put some of these deputies that are working in Houston on overtime jobs. They're working on their days off. 80 to 90% of our deputies are working on their days off. I want to take some salary money, put them to work here in our county, put them to work on their days off on the streets, paying them that money that they're going to make in Houston, and do that with your salary seizure money that we might have and narcotic seizure money that we have. I want to put that money to work, putting these deputies back out on the street. When a deputy gets to be proactive, he gets to look for criminals. That's what police officers, that's what we want to do. We want to look for criminals. We want to get out and actively seek who's doing the crime. We want to be a part of that. So putting these deputies back out, that's what proactivity is. They're looking for drugs. They're looking for criminals. That's what you want to do as a police officer. It's not necessarily responding and being reactive to calls. You want to be out there and be proactive. So putting those proactive deputies back out on the streets with some of your tax dollars that we already have inside of our budget, that's important, that's paramount.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give any of the other candidates 1 minute to have rebuttals or remarks.
I agree to a certain extent with what Mr. Jones has said, that it is very important that we are able to stretch that budget dollar. And I would use the words, rather than saying going back to the Commissioner's Court, I would rather use the word as going back to the taxpayers, because it's the taxpayers' money. When it just gets down to it, when you start asking for money. We have already started, the sheriff has allowed me to already start phasing out some of the, for lack of a better word, some of the fat at the top, and start moving those positions down into patrol positions. And yes, we have been very active in seeking for grants, but here recently, we just, from the judge's office, we received a notification of COPS grants. So we're in the process of reviewing that and being able to get back to the judge's office to be able to find out how we, or where we can go with these, because we have, the biggest part is that to stretch your tax dollars is that, again, like I said, thinking outside the box. Instead of just going back to the pool, taxpayers, start thinking outside the box. What's available out there other than taxpayers' money.
Thank you. Any remarks from, yes, Mr. Kane?
I think that they both hit on it pretty close. Grant money, there is money out there for grants. I'm actually looking at there's some programs that I want to start if I'm elected. One involves our children. There is money out there. I'm looking at someone that doesn't know me. Like I said, I've not made any campaign promises. This person holds actually four certifications. If we could get that person on a grant, there's a lot that can be covered with just that one job at no cost to the taxpayers. Another thing, like they've already mentioned, our drug money. We can use that money. We're going to have to hammer the drugs pretty hard. And there's folks here. We have 59 that comes right through the middle of Livingston and 190. These are drug thoroughfares. There's large amounts of drugs and cash that travel this road every day. And so I want to look at that really hard. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manel? Thank you.
I think as sheriff, when we go to the commissioners and county judge and request a grant, we ought to back it 100%, because there's been grants that we've lost because of lack of participation. That was making deputies time and half, working traffic in Polk County. The leadership didn't keep up with it, and we lost it. As sheriff, I think it's very important when you go after a grant. US 59, Liberty County brings in over $600,000 a year in cash seizures and vehicle seizures on drugs and illegal activity going up and down 59. Less than 2 years ago, Nacogdoches SO hit $1.1 million in cash. Their department ended up with 80% of $1.1 million to help. Thank you. I'm out of town.
Thank you. Owing to the fact that I'm going to direct a question to each of the candidates, Mr. Kane, I've got a question for you. In some of the remarks you're making, you talked about programs. What programs would you institute either in the jails or in the community at large? In the jails, anything like Alcoholics Anonymous or other programs of that ilk outside in the community, anything based on your experience, what would you implement?
Probably, and I work with guys. The job that I do every day is I take guys that are in jail. We go out and work, we mow, we pick up trash. And those guys talk to me, and I've had them tell me, Mr. Kane, there's nothing for us. We get arrested, we go to the penitentiary for narcotics, we get out, 6 months, we're back in jail, and we're going back. There's nothing for us. One of the programs that I want to set up or establish is something for drug offenders. They need something just like Alcohol Anonymous or any of the other programs. We have a serious problems here with drugs, and the drugs are not like what they used to be. I want to start some programs with our children. I would love to have a DARE program here. I'd like to set something up like that. We're going to have to start with our children, because I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of folks that are on some of the drugs that we have today, they tell you there's nothing, they tell me there's nothing personal. As soon as I get out, I'm going right back to it. So I would like to see some programs set up with drug offenders and also with our children, to start with our children.
Thank you, sir. Invite any of the other candidates for a minute of remarks. Not necessarily. No. Oh, yeah, no. Just the opening remarks were alphabetical. From here on, it's a free-for-all.
I think, repeat, what's the first part of the question?
The question is whether inside the jail or in the community at large, what programs would you like to see instituted? Like an Alcoholics Anonymous in the jails or something out in the community?
That's a good question. Out visiting in the community, I was asked that same question about Alcoholics Anonymous inside of our jail, and my answer to them was, we used to have church inside of our jail. We used to have Alcoholics Anonymous in our jail. I don't know some of the workings of why that stopped or how that ended up getting taken away, but I believe that Alcoholics Anonymous and church inside of our jail, we should try and figure out a way to get that program started back up. As your sheriff, I'm gonna look at ways of getting that started back up. I'm also part of the Crime Dog McGruff program that we got started up a few years ago as the past president of the Peace Officer Association. We worked hand in hand with the community that was trying to get the McGruff the Crime Dog. So our McGruff the Crime Dog stuff is active and going, and we're looking forward to getting them in the schools. So there's some other programs that we've got to get out there. So, but as your sheriff, I look forward to putting that McGruff suit on and getting out and visiting with the kids in the schools. You might not even see my face, but you might know who the person is. Thank you.
Thank you. Any of the other candidates?
Yes, exactly. Some of these programs that we're already talking about is programs that have already started initiating. One of the programs that I initiated is working with one of the women's shelters here in town, where we're allowing them to come into the jail. And what they're doing is those mothers who are pregnant, they're coming in and they're starting them up on a service. And what's good about this program is that this service will follow them outside of the jail. So if someone comes into the jail, because we do from time to time have pregnant females who come in, this service will work with them, even go with them to the hospitals when they deliver. But what they'll also do, if there's any other children, they will help with counseling. Other programs that we're looking at is working with, been in talks with the probation department about grants, about even the possibility of using drug seizure money to be able to fund some of the programs that she would like to do, which would be the counseling of those drug addicts in the jail, and that these programs were set up so it would follow them from the jail. Unless they're going to TDC, most of the folks that you look in the jail are going to be short term. They're going to be there for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, 45 days at the most, and they're moving on. But we have to start the programs and keep them accessible to them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Sheriff, I spoke with several people that wants to bring church back into the jail and come in, and no one needs God more than the people, probably some of them in jail. If I put any of you in a 10 by 20 room and left you for months and all you did was get to visit somebody that come see you on weekends or go to rec, low self-esteem, why would you want to get up in the mornings? We've got Nacogdoches County, as I refer back to, but they run a few more than we do in jail, and they have 5 work crew programs, getting people out to have a reason to live. You can't make them. If they do qualify, you can put them out to work. At one time, we had a work program that women went out and picked up garbage. When I started at the Sheriff's Department, if we had one woman in jail every other week, we'd have too many. Now we have 30, 40 at a time. Pitiful.
Thank you. I actually have one more question, and Mr. Nettles, seeing as how you're already up here, I'll ask it of you first. Being in law enforcement is what I've got to imagine to be a bit of a stressful job, to say the least. 30 seconds or less, what do you like to do to blow off steam at the end of the day?
Well, I've got a cattle. Had cattle all my life. And I tell you what, no matter what pasture you go out to, I can go out there and tell them cows what I think. And they don't talk back to me. But if I go home and tell my wife and kids what I think, I'm in trouble. So my time that I like is working cattle. I work cattle. At one time, me and my 2 boys, we worked nearly 2,000 head of cattle a year for different people besides the cattle that we run. And It's relaxing. I'm not a golfer, and I'm out of town.
Thank you. Whoever'd like to go next, same question. What do you like to do to blow off steam at the end of a stressful day?
Well, I'm going to tell, this is a truthful story that I'm telling. Back around 2015, I guess it was, my wife sitting here asked me, said, if you could buy anything that you wanted to buy, what would you buy? And I said, I've always wanted a Harley Davidson. I've rode motorcycles most of my life, but I've never owned a Harley Davidson. And she said, I've always wanted one. So I knew that was the go. So it took me quite some time, but I finally found one just north of Austin, Texas, what I wanted. So I bought this bike, and we rode together for a few months, and I only threw her off a couple of times, but it was normally in the grass. I mean, it wasn't on the road, and there was no damage to the bike.
Normally, right? Normally it was in the grass.
And there was no damage to the bike. But anyway, I come in one day, and she told me, she said, I want my freedom. And I said, okay, get your bag and pack you some stuff. And she said, no, I want my own Harley. So we own 2 Harley Davidsons now.
Thank you.
That's how we blow off steam.
Thank you. Whichever you would like to go next, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Like Paul, I guess my main thing is, yes, I also own a Harley Davidson. And when you've had one of those stressful days, and believe me, there have been a few, being able to go home and get on that bike and ride and listen to the music, let the wind blow through my hair, I mean, it's just, it's really a stress reliever. But the one thing that it does for me is it clears my mind, because I do like to read. And I said that I am a minister of the gospel, but it's hard to be able to read the Bible and to be able to take in and let God talk with you when your mind is cluttered up about the things that went wrong and how do you fix those things when it's running around. That motorcycle helps me clear my mind so that I can really get to the things I like doing, which is the gospel.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, but before I go, I've heard this said 2 or 3 different times. The jail still has church. I think they'd be doing a disservice to the good Lord. I said I was a preacher. There's no way in the world I'm going to let the churches stop in the jail. Miss Steele and the other 2 folks who are coming and doing church, I think it's helping. Scripture says if it only saves one soul, if one is only saved, then the angels in heaven will rejoice. Amen. I will not stop that in the jail if I'm in sheriff.
Thank you. How do you blow off steam at the end of a stressful day?
I guess throwing darts at political posters is not what we're doing. Not supposed to do that. Not that. That's not what I do. I have a motorcycle also, but I don't. Does the day ever end? I don't ever have an end of my days. So I'll tell you, I do owe them an apology. I was told by somebody in the field that we didn't have church anymore. So if we have church again in the jail, I'm proud to hear that. So I don't have to fix that back as your sheriff. But blowing off steam at the end of the day, it's hard to do sometimes. But like he said, like these other guys said, I like to get on the motorcycle. I like listening to music. I like visiting with my family. Yeah. So blowing off steam at the end of the day is important to know that you can leave it at the office if you have to leave it at the office. It's rough days sometimes, so leave it at the office. So.
All right.
Thank y'all for your time. And is this the end?
This is the end.
Is this the part where I get to talk a lot more?
This is where they're going to clap, and I'm going to invite the next candidates up.
Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you. Oh. Great. Okay, my friends, we have one more office, and it's commissioner. So I'd like to invite the candidates for commissioner to the stage. And we will be ending at 5 o'clock or before. So for those of you who are watching the watch. Okie doke. All right, friends. One thing I'm going to ask of the candidates, if you can remember to hold the microphone close to your mouth so that it'll pick up and project better. True to form, I'm going to invite Tim Martin to lead us off with 3 minutes of prepared remarks.
Is this the one working? Hi, I'm Tim Martin. I appreciate everyone having us here. Been waiting 2 months for this, through this campaign. I was excited about it. Get to meet everyone. I think everyone up here has a business background. We've all done business. We've all been in a business background. So all the candidates up here have that qualification. I want to talk a little more about who I am as a person. I was raised here in Polk County by parents. Do I have too much echo? Okay. Okay.
You're the one guy who doesn't have to hold it so close, right?
Yeah, I've got the voice, doesn't have to hold it so close. I can hear that echo. Anyway, I was raised here in Polk County. I was raised by parents, working parents. My mother's a school teacher, bus driver. My dad was a truck driver, insurance agent, depending on where we were in life at that time. We were raised to work, to think, and to always do right. And when you believe it's right, stand there strong. My dad, he was kind of a tightwad. He didn't believe he had to pay anybody to do anything because he had sons and daughters. So when it was time to do something, he gave us a book, said, learn how real quick, because we're fixing to add a room on this house. We're going to put in a septic tank, whatever. He told us to read a book, and there we go. They were a Christian family, church every Sunday, church every Wednesday part of the time, whippings at church, whippings at home. Didn't matter where it was, really. Whippings on the side of the road back in the 70s. It didn't matter back then. And that's who I am. I believe firmly in doing right. If you've kept up with my campaign, you know that I will stand firm. I'll stand strong. There's don't have a lot of backup. And I tell you that because as a commissioner, we got to get your roads done. We got to get them taken care of. And we got to be willing to stand for what's right for the people, even when it's tough, even when it matters, when it gets tough. Last thing I'm going to tell you is I firmly do not believe the ends justify the means ever. I'm opposed to that line of thought. Always. I think if we believe in something and something's right, then we can find a way to do it right, do it with compassion, and do it without being deceitful or mean or any of those things. So I'm Tim Martin. Thank you all very much. Oh, last thing, because she didn't do the red thing yet. I am a veteran, so I obviously support the military.
Thank you. Thank you. Mrs. Robertson.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay. Well, as we talk about ourselves, I'm going to say everyone has one of these cards at your test, so I won't go over all of the things that are already on that card, but I will say that my background, I was not born and raised in Polk County, but I got here as fast as I could, and it is our home now. I was raised and born out in West Texas, and if you said in 3 words, how do you describe the way I was, where my background is, I would say cattle, cotton, and classrooms. Cattle and cotton were my father's occupation. Classrooms, my mother's. So it was quite an experience growing up out there. But it gave me the ability to know how to work hard, to work honest, and do what was right. So that is my background. I have a master's degree, a doctorate degree. I've been in education for 36 years. I'm retired. I'm a business owner. I actually have 2 businesses, and I have about 15 employees right now that are Polk County residents. So I pay taxes in Polk County, and I believe in Polk County again. and I know that I can do the job and do it well.
Thank you. Mr. Willis? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Bob Willis. I'm your current county commissioner here in Polk County, Precinct 1. Enjoyed representing you all for a number of years. I was born and raised in Livingston. I went to Livingston High School. I left there and went to Sam Houston State University, graduated there, came back to Livingston, and was hired as chief deputy in the tax collector's office. Worked in there for 4 years. My boss decided to retire, wanted me to run. I ran, got elected. I resigned there in 1993 and went to work for the Attorney General's office out of Nacogdoches. Was investigator there for almost 4 years. Very good, enjoyed the job, it was great folks. And I came back to run for county commissioner here in Precinct 1. Ran in 2000, got elected, thanks to all you good people, and immediately got sued. My opponent said that the escapees had no right to vote. We disagreed. We went to trial in Polk County District Court. We won that case. He appealed it. We ended up over in the Court of Appeals in Beaumont. The appeals court upheld the lower court decision. We heard that we were fixing to go to the Supreme Court when my opponent passed away. Well, that ended the lawsuit, and you folks still kept your right to vote. We've had numerous rumors of challenges, but I'm here to tell you, as long as I'm your commissioner, I will take it to the Supreme Court of the United States if we have to see to it that you have your right to vote, because we have veterans out there. And they deserved it, they fought for it. I'm also a strong supporter of law enforcement. You can ask these deputies that have been up here. I fought for them this last year and got them some extra money for their salaries. And I will continue, and I'm going to promise each one of them who's running for sheriff, whoever gets elected, you've got one strong friend on the Polk County Commissioner's Court, and I will help you in any way possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Willis, seeing as how you're here, I'll direct the first question to you. What do you see as the most pressing needs for infrastructure or capital projects in the county?
Our precinct is a little different than precinct 3 and 4. We have a high populated area around this area and toward the lake. Roads can definitely be improved if you have the money. Bridges, I've only got 4 in my precinct. Some of the other commissioners have 20. That's a real problem. Working and getting grants, which we have done. Got one approved past year. We opened the bids on a erosion control project for Taylor Lake Estate subdivision, where the river was about to take out the road, which was the only entrance and exit to that subdivision. We've been approved to spend $541,000, I believe it is. We're working on another project that we've got tentative approval, a county road that's on a dam on a lake in Holiday Lake subdivision is on track to be let for bids and to be fixed. And that project is close to $400,000. That's the only way that we can make a significant improvement, because I'm not for raising anybody's taxes. I'm one of these that was raised, you make do with what you have. Well, we just didn't have enough. So we're going out after these grants, trying to find stuff to build roads and bridges, and that's the only avenue that I see that's going to be of any great significant value to us.
Thank you, sir. Invite any of the other candidates to rebut or remark for a minute. The question again was, what do you see as the most pressing needs for infrastructure or capital projects in the county?
Well, definitely infrastructure that is roads and bridges, just like Mr. Willis said, that is always a great need. But there's another need, and it is with the law enforcement. We have to utilize the grants, and those grants do not come in rapidly. One of the things that I've done in the past was be very successful obtaining grants in my education world. As far as other infrastructure, we have to wait and see what I wanted to look at the culverts and the ditches, because we do have those road problems, and we have to solve those, and that is something that is totally important. Another issue that we have as far as infrastructure I'm going to talk about is the road right outside of Escapees. The 146, we need to work with TxDOT because it is extremely dangerous. I visited with Cheryl Flood over the problem, because I've seen some really bad accidents. Also at Holiday Lakes, there's been some really bad accidents. People drive like it's NASCAR speedway there. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Ask it one more time. What do you see as the most pressing needs for infrastructure or capital projects in the county?
The county's a big area, so I'm going to stick with Precinct 1 because that's where I'm going to be commissioner. You have to get your base job taken care of, make sure everything's tight. I think the most pressing job right now is to get the roads and bridges, getting them moving. I wrote a plan. It's on my website. I've also got copies of it on my table. I've written a plan of how to do it. We've got places we can tighten up money. One of the differences in myself and other candidates is I was raised to believe that you make the most of what you have. Always, you make the most of it. And I've written a plan to start devising a way that we can make the most. We don't have to raise taxes. We have to do the most we can possibly do with the money you're already given. So y'all grab one of my plans and take a look at it, and give me input. I want to hear from you.
While you have the microphone, I'll ask you a follow-up question based on what you just said. You have a plan. Do you plan to promote any changes to the existing taxes, and if so, what and why?
We have right now, there's some legislation coming down, I think, that puts some control. Are you talking about how much taxes we charge the people?
Well, in your role, you'll have some influence, as a county official over some of the taxing that happens in this.
Okay, well, the goal always is to tax as little as possible. That goes back to what I said. We have to make the most of what we have. Now, I'm going to build a website as soon as I get to elected commissioner. And on that website, I'm going to put on there the weekly plan, all the plans. Every quarter, I'm going to put the expenditures, not only the budget, but the expenditures, because expenditures really tell you. And then if we do that and we run a tight ship and we all work together, then my goal is to make sure we don't raise our taxes, that we don't raise the maximum amount, and that, again, if we do the most we can do with your money, then ultimately the goal is to hopefully raise that lower that. I almost said that wrong. The goal is to lower that percentage amount by making the most of the money we have.
Thank you. I'll afford the other candidates a chance to rebut or remark for a minute.
One thing I learned is when I was in the tax office is it's sometimes hard to collect all that money. Yeah. But we have actually 3 tax rates. We've got one for road and bridge. We've got one for maintenance and operation. We got one for interest and sinking, which is your debt. In the past, the court would adjust the tax rates so that they had plenty of money in maintenance, operation, and interest and sinking. And if the value goes down, road and bridge was paying for it. They were lowering our tax rate. I got the court to agree 2 years ago This is the way it's set. Road and bridge is set at this amount, and that's it. No matter what the value does, everybody's going to share in the loss. It's not going to be on road and bridge back, so we can keep more money to fix roads and bridges.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I'm certainly not for raising taxes either, but what I am to say is that we need to preserve what we have, and then we need to look at, this is 2020, and it's going to be the census year. And one of the ways that you gain more property tax as far as in more taxes is you have your population. And we need to certainly, every one of us, be counted. And because if we do not gain taxes off of our housetops, we gain it off of our people that we're counted, our children, our adults, everyone. And I believe that another way to gain more with working within our realm is our industry as far as our growth. And we have a wonderful industry that we other counties do not, and that's tourism. We have Nascala, we have Lake Livingston, we have the state park. All of those things bring dollars into our county, which helps us with the tax.
Well, thank you. Seeing as how you have the mic, I'll direct the next question to you. Last year, a conflict arose between some of the residents in the park and Escapees Care over the proposed placement of a cell tower on CARE's land. Some of the residents cited environmental concerns and an anticipated devaluation of property values as a basis of their opposition. Proponents of the cell tower noted the economic advantages it would bring to CARE and the benefits to the surrounding area of improved internet and cell reception. If elected as county commissioner, how would you balance environmental and property concerns against county growth and development?
Well, I would take each thing individually and study it. And that cell tower, that is interesting because I am on the Escapees Care Board, and we did study that at length and looked at the pros and cons. The pros being that it would bring, I believe, about $120,000 over a 10-year period to the Escapees Care. It would have brought increased cell power in service. But however, the other thing is there was a talk of the maybe danger of cancer, which American Cancer Society really has not brought out that would be a concern. But the other is the visibility, and the way the cell tower looked, it would be a con. So, and it's the same thing. I would study it, look at it, and then make my decision.
Okay, thank you. I'll open up the same question of balancing environmental and property concerns against county growth and development. Mr. Willis, thank you.
Good question. The first thing that I would do is to take a census among the majority of the members and see how they felt. If they were for it, I'd be for it. If they were against it, I'd be against it. Now, County Commissioner's Court, as far as I know, wouldn't have any authority to stop the project. But if this is what the residents wanted, I would get with our state representative, our state senator, and our congressman and find out what they could do to help us do whatever the residents want to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm not going to answer to y'all's cell tower specifically. I understand that's an internal thing that's being worked out. The environmental concerns, we need to bring more business. We need to bring more business into the community. We do need manufacturing jobs here. We need them. Now, we're in a perfect position where we can start bringing manufacturing jobs, which create good jobs for our young people. We can keep the best and brightest here. They require gas lines. They require highways. If we talk to these companies and call them and we get them to go into our rural areas, get them to go away from here, get them to go out further into the country where these gas pipelines run, where they can actually sit up and do, then we'll be safe. So I guess I guess the thing is I'm going to try to get them in, and then I will do my best as a commissioner to work with the businesses to lead them away from the Escapees Care Center for sure, and get them down the road away from the main population is what I would do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing as how you have the microphone, I'll ask you another question. Again, if elected to commissioner, you'll have some influence over regulations and permitting processes and whatnot. Are the current regulations, land use regulations, or permitting processes doing enough to ensure public interest, or are they too onerous? What adjustments would you like to see?
As commissioner, you're very limited. That's a difficult question because counties are an organization that cannot go make extra ordinances. Counties can only follow state law. A city is a municipality. They can make ordinances. They can create new laws, new ordinances. A county is very limited to follow by the state. I know the Commissioner's Court has been working on some things. They're going forward with the environmental efforts right now, so that's already in the process, which is important. We have a good permit department that if you're building a home, you have to make sure you're septic, which is the part we all care about. That's the part that can leak out and cause us all problems. I think that's pretty strong right now. We've got some new animal ordinances. It's not a leash law. Some of us keep calling it a leash law. It's not a leash law, but it is designed to give the Sheriff's Department the ability to pick up some animals. I think there's progress to be made always, but I think we're on the right path. We're going forward right now. And I think we're limited in the scope of what we can do. We have to follow state law, and commissioners don't get to make extra laws where that's concerned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll give any of the other candidates a minute to remark. Okay. The question is, as a commissioner, so if elected commissioner, you might have, I'm trying to phrase the question as it was asked. As a commissioner, you might have some influence over land use regulations or permitting processes. Are our current regulations and our current permitting processes doing enough to assure public interest, or are they too onerous?
Okay. That's a pretty broad as far as the current, like you say, in regulations, but like Mr. Martin was saying, you know, we are bound by state law, and the Commissioner's Court cannot do anything that does not come under state law. To answer the question, again, I'm one that I study things, and then I weigh all decisions, and then I make that decision, study all the different solutions, and then I make the decision on which would be the best for the county within the state law. You always have to look at the state law.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Willis?
We hear a lot of complaints about stray animals. And I had a visit with our esteemed Constable Hughes the other day, who, by the way, is pretty well funded in his own department with money he's confiscating from illegal activities and things. And he talked to me about wanting to hire an extra person to just pick up strays in Precinct 1. This guy's on target. We work good together, and I think that's probably the direction we're going to end up going. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Mr. Willis, seeing as how you're up here, I'll ask this question of you. In your opinion, if the county was forced to cut its budget, are there areas, or specifically which areas of the budget should be shielded from cuts if the county was forced to cut its budget?
Well, I'm here to tell you there's every budget, every department can cut something. I don't know of any departments that need shielding. Your smaller departments may not be able to cut near as much as your larger ones. So probably what would happen is we'd figure out how much we needed to cut and direct the percentage to those different departments that would total the cuts needed.
Okay. Thank you. I'll afford the other candidates a minute to. Yes, sir. If the county is forced to cut from its budget, are there areas, and specifically which areas of the budget should be shielded from cuts? So if we have to force money out of the budget.
Trying to figure out real quick who I'd jump in front of and who I wouldn't for that. That's the question, right?
I told you the questions get harder as we go along.
We have to always take care of senior citizens. We have to take care of them, and we have to have law enforcement. And then we got to be able to drive to the hospital. So that's a hard question.
I know.
That is a very that's a hard question. Who are we going to protect? We got to have the basic law enforcement. We got to have the basic roads, and we got to have basic care for our people. So I guess I would just have to look real hard at it, figure out what are the basic needs we need, and then fight to hold those and give up the rest. But I don't know today.
Thank you.
End of my answer.
Thank you. I will repeat, yes. If the county is forced to cut from its budget, are there areas that should be shielded from those cuts? And if so, specifically which ones?
Okay. Well, definitely, I feel very strongly that law enforcement and EMS and those services, that they should be looked at and very seriously, not cut. Of course, road and bridge, but before I would do anything, I would look back at the last 2 or 3 years to see what those particular entities and line items on that budget, how much they had received in the years past to see what had been accomplished, because you have to look at the past to decide the future. But definitely be very vigilant with law enforcement and EMS, and the fire. Of course, in road and bridges.
Thank you.
Can't get away from road and bridges.
Seeing as how you have the microphone, I have a question that I'll ask of you, and again, trying to give everybody equal amount of questions. Okay, previously I asked about the most pressing needs of the county in the ways of infrastructure or capital projects. This is a variation of that that's more of a wish list item. Okay? So if all of a sudden the county was infused with fresh capital, okay, what's one wish list project that you would like to see the county or this precinct engage in?
Is that fresh capital or capital or unlimited capital?
Well, you know, I'm reading the question as it was presented to me, so I'll let you. Well, let's make it fun. It's unlimited capital.
Unlimited capital. Well, of course, the roads and the bridges and pave all of the roads, and that's. I wouldn't just stick if it's unlimited, truly unlimited. And this is again the wish list. I wouldn't just stick with those 130 miles of county roads, county maintained roads. I'd go ahead and include all those those extra 176 that are non-county maintained roads, because that you need those roads to be the very best possible. So, but
well, thank you.
Of course, I know that's not reality, but
no, it's a wish list with unlimited money. Apparently, I'll afford the other candidates a minute to remark.
Well, first of all, I'd pinch myself to make sure I wasn't dreaming. But if we could get some extra money for capital expenditures, roads would be right at the top of my list. Law enforcement would be a close right under it.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
In the fantasy world, I just buy us all an airplane. We'd go on a trip with the unlimited funds. But in the real world, if all of a sudden we got infused with capital, I would use it to generate more capital long term. And the way I would do that is I would use that money to go get businesses. I talked earlier about the manufacturing. We'd go get businesses. What we do in Polk County is we raise our kids to leave. We don't have the jobs for them to stay. So we raise our children, then we send the best and brightest off to college or wherever, trade school, and we leave them wherever we send them to. We're not giving them reason to come back. So if we get a big infusion of fresh capital, I'm going to use it to find some companies to come to Polk County and create some jobs so we can have the young, smart, energetic people with the new, fresh ideas here paying taxes and working with us and help us carry this load forward.
Thank you. We're right at time. I do have one question. I'll give 30 seconds, sure. This will be it. Yeah. Owing to the fact that the Escapees RV Club by nature is a travel club, and the people in this room and the friends that are joining us from afar are consummate adventurers, share with us your favorite travel memory in 30 seconds or less.
I went to North Carolina and went and hiked the Appalachians and tried to hike from distance to end, and it didn't snow, which was cold and didn't work out very well, but as it warmed up and we went along, I guess my favorite memory is you walk through those woods on top of those mountains, then you come to a big open area and you can see for miles and see the beauty of what God made, and you're on those Appalachians and Smoky Mountains, and you see the smoke coming off of them, you see the beautiful sky, and you just get to realize that we're all living in a world of grandeur that was made by God, and gives you appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open it up to whoever wants to go next. Favorite travel memory?
Well, I think I've already experienced it. My wife, Julie, would you stand up? Let everybody see you. Stand up, quick. Okay. She and I took our granddaughters to Dolly World this past year. And we got to see the Smoky Mountains and see some things, but most important, we got to spend some quality time with those two girls. At that time, one was 5, one was 6. And it was a rather tiring vacation. I don't call getting to sit down, but it was worth it. Family time, beautiful scenery, and we love it. And we love all of you and hope you all enjoy traveling.
Thank you.
Well, one of our favorite vacations was the Grand Canyon whenever our 2 children were small. And at the time, I don't know if you all remember when Chevy Chase in vacation, they went to the Grand Canyon, they look over and that at the time was kind of the way we did, because we had our 2 small children, and it was about 125 degrees in the shade. But it was a wonderful time. We did all kinds of things and went across the country, and like these other guys have said, there's not any place like America, and not any place like the beauty that the Lord has made. And it was just a wonderful time. And now, as our children are 34 and 31, we laugh about those times, literally, how we were so hot. We said, look, there's the Grand Canyon. Now let's get on down there and stay in the cool. But it was a wonderful time.
Well, thank you. Please join me in giving another round of applause to these candidates and all the candidates who participated in this event. We sincerely hope that the information that you gained today will help you make more informed decisions in the primaries and in the general elections. Please know that early voting for the primaries has already begun. The primary elections will be held on March 3rd. We will make a video of this event available on the Escapees YouTube channel, and we'll distribute that by link to anybody who wants it. And again, thank you for attending the Escapees RV Club's 2020 Political Forum. Remember to vote like your county, your state, and your country depend on it. Thank you.